Just today. Yeah. Oh, geez.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting for Monday, May 13th. Could we please have a roll call?
Councilmember Wilkinson.
Present.
Councilmember Cooper.
Present.
Mayor Mark.
Here.
Councilmember Chemnitzer.
Present.
Councilmember Lynch.
Here.
Thank you very much. We are going to adjourn to a closed session. And will you keep the meeting running or will we pause it?
We can pause it.
Okay, so we'll return at 6:30 or a little bit before that and continue the meeting. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I would like to reconvene the March 13th City Council meeting. We have already opened the meeting. We've had a roll call. We're returning from a closed session and there is nothing to report from that closed session. I'll take other public comments on this, Andrew, on the closed session. Okay, move on to item 7, reports and presentations. Oh, I apologize. First is City Council reports. Are there any council reports to be made this evening?
Yes, I have a few.
Please.
First, I want to report that I attended this Senior Expo at the library on April 26th, as I'm sure others did. And I want to just report to anyone who missed it, it was a tremendous event. About 200 people came, close to 200 people. All of the public areas of the library were used. There was a huge amount of information shared among the people who were tabling it, but also just among the attendees sharing information. I want to thank Larry Binkley, who is our representative to the Commission on Aging, his counterpart Jane Gould in Tiburon, Dr. Tom Cromwell, who once again offered a lot of information about emergency services. The ranch and the library co-sponsored it. And we had representatives from transportation agencies, including TAM, housing, caregiving, medical assistance, insurance, and social activities. It was a really great event. Then I also had an afternoon community chat with Jane Cooper. We have been trying to have these at different times of day and different times of the week. Ours was on a weekday afternoon, and we decided that's probably not the time that's most convenient for the most residents. We had a small turnout, but a very lively discussion. And I met with Adam Gavser and Ken Johnson in preparation for the Belvedere Barbecue on June 14th, which will happen before the June 15th event, and it's one day before our first concert in the park. So preparation for that community day is going forward. And fourthly, I have met with Jim Lynch. As we said in the last meeting, the two of us are beginning to draft a new board and commission member guide, which will help with onboarding, will help with hierarchy, obligations, and opportunities for the volunteers on the various committees and the commission. And that's my report. Thank you, Mayor Mark.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of brief items. The first one is that the town of Tiburon kindly invited myself and Bob McCaskill to participate in their interview for consultants for their upcoming traffic study of Tiburon Boulevard. And I think subject to their council's decision that you can't hear. Sure. Subject to their council's decision, that consultant will be hired. Going forward, there will be a whole series of community meetings to give input both from Belvedere and Tiburon to ideas as to how to improve both traffic and safety on Tiburon Boulevard. And we'll definitely be promoting those to the community because we all hate traffic there and we want as much input from the community as possible. And the solutions are both, they're being considered are both engineering and non-engineering solutions. And so again, any community input there would be great. The second item is the Yellow Bus Program, which runs for the Reed Union School District and is sponsored by Tiburon and Belvedere. Tickets for the upcoming school year or annual passes are going on sale on May the 20th. So anyone with school kids in the school district, that's the date that those passes go on sale. And for the Belvedere routes, they are expected to sell out. So if you have a kid who wants to ride the bus, please buy those passes sooner rather than later. Thanks.
I wanted to report that I represented the Belvedere City Council and attended the youth town hall for Marin County last month. It was full of young ambassadors, election ambassadors that were all high schoolers representing all of Marin. Every town in Marin sent either a mayor or a vice mayor. So there were 12 of us up there answering all their questions as best that we could. And it was great getting younger citizens involved and seeing how committed they were to understanding what the policies were for elected officials. I know I came back with an idea that I wanted to just throw out there, which is that since we're having a first discussion about e-bikes on our agenda tonight, and it's eventually could turn into an ordinance that certainly would be involving our younger generation. So I was hoping several communities actually have youth committees that they turn to once in a while. And I was thinking that the e-bike would be a great time for us to start and invite some younger members of our community to give their feedback and help us craft whatever goes out and forward. I also sit on the Housing Element Committee and just want to give a quick update that the subcommittee just began meeting again and responding to the comments that we received from the HCD in Sacramento. The cities received 2 grants that we hope will cover the cost of any consultant's work going forward on the third draft, which is what we're beginning just now. And I was also asked to bring up that June is National Gun Violence Month. And because we didn't have time to get it on our agenda, any kind of a proclamation for supporting anti-gun violence, we were asked if we would consider doing a proclamation in June, even though gun violence is June 7th, I think is the actual day. But anyway, it's something we can consider. And our wildlife consultant, Rebecca Dimitrich, will host a Zoom on Thursday, May 23rd from 5 to 6 p.m. to help us as a community understand what to expect this spring and summer as we transition into different seasons with our coyotes. And we have, we're pretty sure there are pups. So it is a good time for us to understand the behavior and what could be coming up in front of us. So thank you.
Thank you for the council reports. Before we move on to the city manager report, I'd just like to take a moment, if we could, to commemorate the passing of our citizen emeritus and former city council member Steve Block. If we could take a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. City manager report, please.
Just a reminder on public,
Sorry,
public
yeah.
comment.
Open a public comment on the city council reports. Seeing none in the room here, Madam Clerk.
We have Delhi Woodring.
Thank you.
Delhi, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
We can.
Sorry if I'm being repetitive. I don't know if any of you were stuck in today's traffic holdup that apparently was a PG&E endeavor near Stewart Drive. But as I became hostage, I had passed the Cove Shopping Center, and there's no way for me to get out of that traffic congestion. I'm stuck there. And I'm wondering if the city of Belvedere and the town of Tiburon can really coordinate with PG&E and Caltrans. I know you've tried this before, but if they could do a blinking light where the blinking light is near the Presbyterian Church, that would advise you traffic delay, 30-minute delay, one would have the option of getting off there, either turning right at the church or left onto Blackfield Drive, so that you could then get out of the Tiburon area and go do something else rather than sitting in that traffic. They hold you hostage because you get in it and there's no way to get out of it. So I'm hoping that as things get worse, as the state is ramming growth down our throats, we will find a way to make life easier for those of us who live on the peninsula driving this 2-lane road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Mark, out of the 17 attendees, there are no other hands raised.
Thank you. City Manager Zadnik, if you could, city manager report, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Mark and council members. It's a little bit cooler today, but I wanted to point out that summer is just around the corner, and with it, of course, the higher danger from dry vegetation. For the past 5 years, the city has set aside capital funding to reduce the vegetation and fuel load throughout the city. In addition to our seasonal trimming, we're again hosting a curbside vegetation pickup program. This is a free service to Belvedere residents that will begin on Tuesday of next week. So look for details in the Belvedere Breeze monthly newsletter or visit our website for more information. This program has been very successful for the past few years, and we hope that every household in Belvedere can participate and help to do their part. On another topic, it's been a long-standing tradition for the city to hire an intern at the beginning of each summer. This year, the City Council made the decision to continue the tradition by advertising this exclusive opportunity through the city's website, several local colleges, and other usual channels. The application period closed last Friday, and I'm pleased to report that we have received applications from 6 candidates. All applicants are college students from institutions in Marin and the Bay Area. The internship offers a valuable chance to shadow council members and staff and work on several important projects that not only benefit the city, but look great on a first-time resume. We will be scheduling interviews for the last week of May, and I'm looking forward to announcing the name of our new hire at the June council meeting. And that's all I have for now, unless there's questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager? Seeing none, open the public forum for questions or comments from this item. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7C, presentation and request for funding from the Tiburon Diversity Inclusion Task Force. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. Good to see everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ruben Calra. I'm a resident of Belvedere for the 4th year. Love it here. It's a great community, and only striving to make it better. Appreciate the yellow bus program. It's great for my son. E-bikes, it was great in traffic today. I think it saved me about 30 minutes coming from Blackie Pasture just shortly. But for those of you who don't know, we've had the Tiburon Diversity Inclusion Task Force. It's now it's in its 4th year. I'm the lone member from Belvedere as an official, and we've been doing, I think, a pretty good job so far of helping lead the way for Tiburon to be just a great symbol for the rest of Marin in helping making this community more welcoming. And we've done that through a variety of cultural events. We've also evaluated policing. We have a terrific chief with Chief Wu here in Belvedere. Love Chief Jean in Tiburon, and also looking at like departmental recruiting to help make our communities look more diverse. And since I am the lone member, I'm given an update in some time. So I just figure we've been doing a number of cultural events over the years, which have been extraordinarily well received. This will be our 4th Juneteenth celebration. We'll be doing our 2nd Diwali celebration on downtown Main Street later this year. We've done 2 Persian New Year celebrations, Nowruz, and then we have coming actually this Saturday is our first Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Celebration at Zielinski Park. And I see you've kindly put some flyers out for everyone. So I encourage folks to come out. Asian Americans do represent 10% of our community in Tiburon and Belvedere. And then we've, these are fun things. And then in the background, we've also worked with integrating diversity, equity, and inclusion into the 20-year plan for the city of Tiburon, which has been fantastic. And just a couple of months ago, we actually started a formal strategic annual plan moving forward where we're looking at policing, recruitment, and cultural events. And it's, I'm the lone member here, and I said, hey, a lot of Belvedere folks participate or active in these events, and I think it's important just because Belvedere historically has not been the most diverse community, but we're moving forward, trying to think positive. Love to get the support of council for supporting some of these events comparable to some of the other events that are supported by the community. I think we have Juneteenth coming up on June 15th. It'll be the same. It's basically a great destination Tiburon weekend. We have the Tiburon Classic Car Show. We have the Juneteenth celebration. We also have the event in by Belvedere here in Belvedere Park, led by Adam, and I'm sure others. But yeah, we have a great event planned. We have the Buffalo Soldiers coming out. And the one thing I got to say is, as these events have come together, more and more community members asked to participate. Like this year, we're going to have we get Play Marin from Paul Austin wants to come out and host some community events, which we'll be doing this year at this year's Juneteenth. The Southern Marin Mothers Network, a member, I guess the head of diversity, equity, inclusion, reached out to me. They have 1,300 families in Marin. They want to volunteer and host a kids booth. The National Parks John Muir Foundation reached out to me, and I guess the John Muir wants to come out and just talk about diversity and other things at our event. And we have a great 18-person band. I think it was actually Tony Bennett's former band, lead drummer. And it also includes a member of the band you might know, former Vice Mayor of Tiburon, Noah Griffin. And it's just going to be a great event, and just asking for, I think, $1,500 to help support the event. There's been some inflation, as we might see out there if you go to the market. And so just asking for a little bit of support, because I think the commitment demonstrates that Belvedere cares about diversity, equity, inclusion. And I think it's a reflection of our growing and beautiful community for ourselves and our children. So thank you, and happy to answer any questions about what we're doing, and happy to come out more often if you need me to.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? No,
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your work. Moving on to item 7D, Police Chief Report, including e-bike update. I'm sorry. Open public comment for this last item. Seeing none in the room. Any online?
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. Item 7D.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor Mark and council members. Tonight, I am pleased to present the Police Department's first quarter report for 2024. The police department prides itself in delivering an unparalleled police service that allows our residents to enjoy a very unique quality of life. Well, starting off with our RIPA data, this quarter, 7 individuals were detained based on 1 calls for service and 6 officer-initiated contacts. Of the 7 stops, 6 were for vehicle code violations, and one was for suspicious criminal activity. In all, 5 warnings were given with 2 arrests made. The perceived racial compositions consist of 1 Hispanic, 1 Southeast Asian or Middle Eastern, 1 Black, and 4 Caucasians. During this quarter, the police department handled 716 incidents, which included 2 Part 1 offenses highlighted in bold and 4 Part 2 offenses also highlighted in bold. The remaining 710 incidents are classified as all other incidents, with the majority relating to calls for service. During this quarter, the police department conducted 6 traffic stops, made 2 arrests with 2 referrals for prosecution, received several citizens' appreciations, and hired a new police officer. 33 coyote-related incidents were reported during this quarter as well. And as part of our ongoing professional development, PD personnel attended online and in-person training that were either mandated or for knowledge and skill enhancements. We also updated 12 flexible policies in accordance with the amended laws. The updates are detailed in the staff report. Lastly, the PD continues to be active in community events, which we always take great pride and joy in being part of. In addition to the police report, the quarterly report, I also like to give an update on e-bikes. Great, thank you. There are common misunderstandings about what is and is not permitted by law regarding electric bicycles and scooters. Several months ago, the city proactively created an e-bike, e-scooter safety page on the PD's website to help our residents navigate the various rules pertaining to e-bikes and scooters. This page provides easy to understand information on e-scooters and the different classes of e-bikes, plus current rules governing each, such as helmet, age, license requirements, and traffic rules. In addition, we also included links to the Department of Motor Vehicle and TAM e-bike safety web pages and to a free e-bike safety and training course that provides a certificate upon completion of the online course. In short, e-bikes are broken down into 3 classes. Class 1 and 3 e-bikes offer only pedal-assisted mode with no throttle feature. The maximum motor-assisted speeds are 20 miles per hour and 28 miles per hour for Class 1 and Class 3, respectively. On the other hand, Class 2 e-bikes offers both pedal-assisted and throttle modes and can attain a maximum legal speed of 20 miles per hour. Regardless of class, e-bike riders must obey all rules of the roads, such as stopping at stop signs and helmet requirements, as promulgated in the California Vehicle Code and the Belvidere Municipal Code. The Belvidere Municipal Code requires all bicycle riders to obey all applicable traffic laws. It also prohibits riding bikes on sidewalks, pedestrian paths, playgrounds, parks, and school grounds. It also prohibits certain unsafe acts, such as clinging to vehicles and acrobatic or fancy riding. The town of Tiburon recently enacted an electric mobility device ordinance, which has some similar prohibitions already promulgated in our municipal codes. Lastly, a recent Marin County grand jury report on e-bike safety provided findings and recommendations for local jurisdictions to respond to. It is our commitment to continue this discussion in the coming 2 months and hope to adopt a countywide ordinance at a future date for consistency throughout Marin County. And with that, this concludes my report and available for questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions for Chief Wu?
Thanks, Chief Wu. I had one question about your first part of the report, the 3-month period, when you mentioned that you had, I think it was 710 service calls,
700 and
around
16.
700. Anyway,
Yeah.
I just wondered, I was curious, is there a certain time of day that most of those calls come in? Do they come in at night, or are they usually during the?
I think without doing further research, at least it's very safe to say that generally speaking, it's probably during the day when the city's most active, and it's mostly through Monday through Fridays, because a lot of it are traffic related.
The calls you get are traffic
A
related?
lot of them are traffic related or parking related, rather. But it also runs a gamut of noise complaints like leaf blowers or other types of violations. Without looking at specifically and giving a breakdown, which I'll be more than happy to do, generally speaking, they are happening during the day.
Okay, okay, great. Thanks. And then I'm really glad you brought up about the e-bikes, and I think you're starting us off on the right foot of trying to get organized. I know that Damon Conley, our assembly person, is very active in this and is proposing a pilot program just for Marin. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with, and then hopefully we can join in and all be on the same page, which would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a couple. First, thank you very much for both the quarterly report and the e-bike update. I have a request. I know in the last 12 months, you gave, your department gave a seminar, or it might have been a webinar, but I think it was a seminar on financial elder abuse. And I think that's something that our residents would, in the last 12 months, the police department gave a seminar on financial elder abuse and things that our residents here in Belvedere might be confronted with. And I would really encourage you to do that again in the coming months. I think it would be very well received and really beneficial. When we think of crime in Belvedere, it's really important not to omit financial crime. So thank you for that. And secondly, I'm really glad that our police department is staying on top of the developments with regard to e-bikes. The Transportation Authority, the Marin, which I'm our commissioner for, heard reports from the emergency room doctors in Marin reporting that there have been a tremendous number of accidents involving e-bikes. So it's really important for policymakers and police departments to keep abreast of what we can do to help people who may not actually understand the dangers, even though there are a lot of opportunities provided for these. And to bring electric scooters into the mix, because I think we've all seen electric scooters on the bike paths. And there's a lot of close calls at the intersections. I can report from the legislative committee that there are a number of bills proposed in the legislature. I don't know whether Damon Connolly is one of the authors of those bills. I know he's very, very attentive to this problem. He's our representative, of course. As we craft a county ordinance, we will be looking at what the state is doing so that these are consistent and complementary. So thanks for giving us an update, and please continue to do that over the summer.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Wilkinson, any questions? Chief, I do have a couple. Do you anticipate suggesting or recommending, perhaps in consultation with the city manager, Belvedere adopt a e-bike policy or an ordinance? Because I understand the the state laws, but how it applies to the specifics of our community, Belvedere and Tiburon, it's not always that clear. I mean, class 2 and class 3, you can ride on a bike path and a bike lane if you're class 2, but not class 3. So is Tiburon bike path a bike path? So they can't go on that path, but they clearly do. So that's what I mean. An ordinance that we would put in place would reference specific paths and lanes and places where people could or would write them. So I think at some point we need to see what the fallout is from the state perspective, and then see how it applies to us so that there's no confusion or misunderstanding. Will be my thought or suggestion there.
Great, thank you very much. I have been in constant contact with my counterpart in Tiburon and just kind of feed off ideas from with each other, as well as consultation with our city manager regarding potential ordinances.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Any public comment on Police Chief Wu's report? Please.
There we go. How about now? Okay, thanks. I'm Susan Clough, and I've spent a lot of time on traffic and safety committees in my life, and also was one of the founding members for Safe Routes to Schools. So I really encourage you to take a look at this and find out what these legislative rules are, because the state often does put through legislation that is not always very clear for the cities. I've sent our chief and also the Department of Public Works an email about legislation that was passed last year about also not parking within 20 feet of crosswalks. It's a new regulation. And if you'll notice, most of our crosswalks is very tight, where the is supposed to excuse me, I'm blabbering here. This legislation is supposed to improve sight lines for pedestrians and bicyclists. And we have both old and younger people who would really benefit this. But when we look at our crosswalks, they're almost all in places where it would be very difficult to give that extra 20 feet. And so each crosswalk will have to be handled. We also have a number of situations where it might be the only place where you could do drop-offs for construction or so on and so forth. So I understand that staff is looking at, and I would encourage them to look at that legislation as well, because the only directive from the state, who's sending us no money to do that striping or the painting or any signs, is that it must be done by next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any further comment on this item in the room? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Mayor Mark, there are no hands raised.
Thank you. Move on to 7E, interview for appointments to the following committees. I believe we have one interview for the Parks Spaces, for the Parks Open Spaces and Lanes Committee, and one for the Joint Recreation Committee. And just to make a note that we will be appointing the Parks Open Spaces and Lanes Committee in June, in our June meeting, and later this evening for the Joint Recreation Committee. So is there a staff report, or are we just going to invite the people, the applicants to come up?
No staff report for that item, just if they're available. Are they
Okay.
on Zoom or are they in person? Great.
I'd like to call Wayne Stacy to come up, please. Good evening.
Good evening.
Feel free to make a brief statement, and then we can have questions follow up. We've all read your letter and are enthusiastic about your coming this evening.
Well, if you've already read the letter, that's the brief statement. So I'll let you go to your questions and save everybody a repeat.
Thank you. Let me just start. Tell me about your experience on parks, in our parks, in our lanes, and your interest in the committee.
So first of all, from the lanes perspective, I live on Woodland Lane. I've got the great everyday trek 90 stairs up to my front door. So I probably spend more time than you want. Anybody that's been on Woodland Lane, if you're greeted by two dogs with a nose under the gate, begging for food, those are my dogs. So so I've been, I guess that was my introduction to the Belvedere lanes. But from there, I've seen, the maintenance issues, the rebuilding of them, Woodland's in pretty good shape, but how they can be dangerous for kids. I've actually with the e-bikes, I saw a teenager riding an e-bike down Woodland Lane, which that wins the award for stupid feet. But those are the kinds of things I've been around, but I see people come and walk them from our community, from other communities. So they're just in itself, when I first moved, I thought they were stairs, but then I realized they're really part of the community and have to be maintained. Those that are old, they've got handrail problems that you've just got to work through over time. And there's a maintenance schedule that needs to be there for them to stay there for the next 100 years. And in terms of the parks, my son grew up playing in the old version of the park. I watched the debate with the new park coming in, and on my way to work every day, I see all the kids playing in it and kind of the next generation coming up. So it's an important piece of the community, important for any volunteer to want to be part of it still.
Wonderful. Thank you for your interest. Anyone further questions?
Have you been able to attend any of the parks and open space meetings or zoomed in at all?
I've talked with other
Okay.
people on the committee about different issues and budget issues, those types of things to learn what the demands are and what the needs are. And most of them are not exciting, high profile things that anybody really wants to deal with. They're what can you afford to do? What should you afford to do? What can you do long term? Maintenance is not a item that's going to show up in the paper, but if maintenance fails, then it does. So those are the kinds of discussions I've had with a lot of people.
And you're still interested. That's great. That's a good sign for a volunteer.
Somebody's got to do it, and towns this size don't work without volunteers.
Right. Very true.
So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much for putting in your application. I'm wondering, later in our meeting tonight, we're going to be looking at the budget, and the budget line around the parks and open space and the lanes mentions an aspect of public space that we've seen before, involving the public-private partnerships as a way to fund the lanes and not so much the maintenance, but primarily the construction and improvements around our open spaces, which of course are an important part of our social infrastructure. Do you have any thoughts about raising revenue in public-private partnerships?
So I think back up my current position. I spent years as a lawyer until I retired, and now I'm at Berkeley Law. So I run a center that's 100% financed by gifts. So I don't raise the money every year. My staff's gone, I'm gone. And that's kind of gives me that idea where fundraising is. And I'm always hesitant just to ask for gifts for the sake of gifts. You have to show something you're doing for the community, and you got to have, it's a business in some ways, a return on investment, why people want to be involved, what the next generation will need, what the current generation needs. And it really is what I think the right word is, that partnership. But just a handout's a hard thing to get anymore in any place. I mean, the university suffers from that. If they just go ask alumni for gifts, they don't get them. But if they have something in return, something that their people are investing in, that gets people excited. So that's what we'd want to look at is those kinds of those partnerships. What are you doing for neighborhoods, the events like I saw in the police chief's report, the lane walk, those types of things to get people excited and people involved.
Great. Thank you very much. Great answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stacy, for raising your hand to volunteer and for emphasizing and acknowledging how important the volunteers are in our community. I wanted to follow up just briefly on one comment you made about the park, and you followed the redevelopment of our local playground here. Could you give me your reaction to the debate about the material that was used? I realize that's going to put you on the spot, but that's why we're all here,
So
Thank you.
I think you used the right word, debate. It looks like it was thoroughly vetted and went through the appropriate processes. Nothing was done secretly. Nothing was run through quickly. And so I'm always a believer in process. And if the process is done well in the open, then you've got to trust where it got to. And in that particular case, I know the evidence came in on the scientific pieces of it. And I think the result kind of shows that the community was in favor of it because the park is packed every time I drive by. So that
Terrific.
would be my take on it.
Thank you for the answer, and I appreciate your emphasis on process. So thank you.
I have no further questions. Just thank you for putting your hat in the ring. And I'm always in awe at the incredible caliber of people that apply for these small little committees. So thank you for stepping up.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We will not be making an appointment this evening, but we will be doing so in June. And thank you so much for your interest. I'd like to call Jeff Aguero for the Belvedere Tiburon Joint Recreation Committee. Hi, Jeff.
Good evening. Hello. So yeah, I'll follow in his footsteps, I guess, and say I think you've read my statement, but I'm a father of 2 young kids. I'm a user of the ranch or the recreation committee pretty much every day. And my older son is there for about 2.5 hours every day. So I've had a wide opportunity to experience the youth side of the programs, and I'm planning to take a few of the adult classes later this year. So I think it's a great asset to the community. And I think there's some areas for opportunity, and I would love to be able to contribute to kind of help steer that moving forward.
Thank you. Any questions?
So I'd love to hear more about those ideas that you have.
Yeah, so I sketched out a few of the broad strokes in the in my note, but basically I think there's an opportunity around doing partnerships with other organizations kind of in Marin and both public and private to kind of increase the breadth of classes and courses and events offered. There's some of this that happens already. So some of the on the youth side of things, they have third-party organizations come in and teach some of the specialized classes. So things that around kind of STEM and engineering that maybe the ranch instructors who are on staff aren't necessarily experts at. So they have a third-party company in. I've spoken to some of the folks at the ranch, including some of the other parents when I run into them at pickup. And I think that there's, I would say, a large appetite for more of those things. You can also see it based on how quickly the classes get signed up for, and within like 5 minutes all the slots would be gone. So I think being able to partner with more organizations would be one. I think another is just kind of expanding the breadth, especially on the adult side. So dealing with some more kind of relevant topics. I put AI in there because I feel like that's such a hot topic right now, but it's actually come up in a couple conversations where just having some sort of intro course, kind of like they did for computers like 20 or 30 years ago, for some of the hotter topics now would be good. And then I think the only other thing I would say is that there's some operational and kind of logistical opportunities, I would say, just to make things run smoother regarding like sign up and registration, and especially making sure that people know about when the registration dates are. There's a number of folks that are my parents of my son's friends that they didn't even realize that the date for the ranch sign up had passed. And by the time that, or that was coming up, by the time that it did open up, the slots were already full. They couldn't participate in it. So, and they wished, their kid wanted to join my son in a couple of the things. So I think those are kind of a rough summary of it, but I'm sure there's more, and I'm sure some of these things have already been looked at in the past too.
Please.
I want to thank you for stepping up and your very, very thoughtful letter and comments tonight. I think it's very helpful for us to have a parent on the board. And I think maybe your son's in classes with my grandchildren.
Probably.
But anyway, I think that you'll be very much part of the conversation, and thank you very much for putting your application in.
I just want to echo that. Thank you, Mr. Aguero, for raising your hand and volunteering. We really appreciate it. And I really thought your submission was very thoughtful and thorough. Thank you.
Thanks.
I can only echo all that and say I thought your ideas tonight were terrific, and I'm sure you'll be a great asset to the whole community. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. We have, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be making new appointments next month. So hang tight, and thank you so much for volunteering.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I will open up the public forum for comments on these two applicants. Seeing none here.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar, items A8, A through AH. Does the city council have any questions or interest in pulling any item?
I was interested in pulling 8E.
Okay. I'll ask the folks in attendance if there's any questions or interest in pulling any items other than 8E. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, anyone online?
Mayor Mark, there are no hands raised.
Okay, could I please have a motion for A through D, and then F, G, and H?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Do you, Councilmember Cooper, want to ask questions about 8E? I don't think a staff report has been prepared.
No, I didn't expect that. We received a letter from a community member questioning Belvedere's decision to display the pride flag in June. And so I just thought it would be appropriate to recognize that we received that letter and see if there was anything more that the writer wanted to add or had any questions of us about it. And I thought, I was thinking about it, and I tonight, for an example, we are a community that does embrace diversity. We're about to vote on giving money from our budget to the Juneteenth and Diwali festivities later on this month and next week and in June. I just hope that most people in the community would join me, and I think the rest of the city council, in thinking about this more as a humanitarian issue and not a political issue. I see the flag more as a symbol that says, you are welcome here, everyone is welcome here. But perhaps it's a discussion for people.
Thank you. Any further thoughts or discussion?
I would just echo those comments. I can't say it better, but I will echo them. Thank you, Councilmember Cooper.
I share Councilmember Cooper's embrace of this opportunity.
Thank you. I'll open up for public comment. Seeing none in the room.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. So can I ask you, Councilmember Cooper, if you'd like to make a motion for item
Sure.
8E?
Yes, I make a motion that we adopt item 8E from the consent calendar.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item 9 of our public hearing, discussion of possible action on a tentative subdivision map and revocable license for Mallard Point.
Mayor Mark, did you want to change the order of the agenda on this item, or we can?
Let's leave it the way it is.
Okay.
And I must recuse myself from this item. I own property within 500 feet of Mallard Point.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to our city staff for a staff report when they're prepared.
Good evening, Mayor Mark and council members. Just a quick reminder of where the project is tonight. It is across the street, located on three lots, close to, on Community Road, near City Hall, and the community park we were just discussing. On March 19th, 2024, the Planning Commission reviewed design review, demolition, tentative subdivision map, and revocable license for 40 units located at 1 to 22 Mallard Road. The project proposed a 15-unit apartment building, 1 fourplex, 2 triplexes, 4 duplexes, and 6 single-family homes with 1 accessory dwelling unit. 4 of the units would be affordable to lower-income households. The request includes 1 concession and multiple waivers under state density bonus law. The Planning Commission was the decision-making hearing body on design review and demolition permits of the project and conditionally approved these applications by a 5-to-1 vote. No appeal was filed, and the Planning Commission's decision is final. The City Council is the decision-making authority on the tentative subdivision map and revocable license, and the Planning Commission, by a unanimous vote, recommended conditional approval of these applications. The project before the City Council tonight includes the tentative subdivision map and the revocable license. On January 22nd, 2024, the City Council, by a 3-to-1 vote, determined that the project qualifies for the Class 32 categorical infill exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act. The tentative subdivision map application includes reconfiguring the 3 existing parcels to create 12 lots, which would contain 6 single-family homes with 1 accessory dwelling unit, 4 duplexes, 1 fourplex, 2 triplexes, and 15 units in an apartment building. The tentative subdivision map also proposes to create public utility, private sewer, private stormwater, and private access easements on the property. The 12 new lots will range in size from about 7,200 to 15,605 gross square feet. Mallard Road will be reconfigured as a private access easement to serve the 40 units. Improvements to Community Road are also proposed, including new crosswalks and ADA compliant sidewalks. The lots shown on the map conform to the site plan that was approved by the Planning Commission as part of the design review application. The Planning Commission approved 8 waivers for the project, and 2 of the waivers approved relate to the tentative map tonight. Lot area per unit for Lot 1, Lot 2, and Lot 12, and lot frontage for Lot 5. The proposed Mallard Point project includes a private drive, Mallard Road, providing access to the 40 proposed units. At the Planning Commission's March 19th meeting regarding Mallard Point, city staff described Mallard Road as a private access easement that is not required to meet city standards for private streets. The proposed Mallard Road is a 20-foot wide access easement and is typical for internal private access to multifamily residential developments. The proposed private access easement is not intended to provide a public street thoroughfare. The proposed access easement is a 2-way private way with 10-foot wide lanes for a total width of 20 feet measured from face of curb to face of curb. There are no sidewalks proposed as the internal way is designed as a shared street with pedestrian and bicycles having priority, as outlined in the project's transportation study. The study recommended that the private way include textured pavement, traffic calming devices to physically reduce vehicle speed, and shared street signage at the entrances of Community Road to reinforce the shared street use. Oops. Questions have been raised regarding whether the proposed Mallard Point should be considered a private access easement or a private road that must meet city public street standards. However, because the city did not identify any inconsistencies regarding the right-of-way, street width, sidewalks, or other features within 30 days of finding the application complete, the proposed Mallard Road has been and continues to be deemed consistent with these requirements. As discussed at the Planning Commission's March 2024 meeting, even if a different determination had been made earlier, the city would likely not have any more authority than it has today. The applicant would have had the opportunity to request waivers from these standards, and the city would have needed to demonstrate a specific adverse impact that could not be mitigated to deny the waivers. The current state housing laws severely limit the city's ability to enforce its own standards. In terms of the revocable license, the project proposes landscaping, lighting, and pedestrian paths in the community road right-of-way. The landscaping and lighting improvements would consist of a 1-foot band at the back of the sidewalk on Community Road. A pedestrian walkway is proposed on Lot 1. The pedestrian pathway is necessary to provide access to Lot 1, and the landscaping and lighting will enhance the aesthetic qualities of the streetscape. There are no retaining walls or fencing proposed in the revocable license area. Just a note, condition number 10 has been amended to add that the project will be consistent with City of Belvedere Municipal Code 19.38070B. Additionally, condition of approval number 1 references the design review application, and it will be amended to reference the tentative map application, and that's the indemnity clause. With that, staff recommends that you adopt the resolution recommending approval of the tentative subdivision map and approve the revocable license for improvements in the right-of-way.
Thank you. Do we have questions for our city staff? Just a procedural question. Once we complete questions to our city staff, do we, does the applicant get a presentation?
Yeah.
Thank you. Questions for our Director of Planning? Please.
Thank you so much for your staff report. I had just kind of a general question, a couple of general questions. I am asking on the map, the spur driveway down to the Lot 5 has a circle at the top, which I think has to do with turning radiuses, but it's covered in hash marks, and I couldn't find on the legend what all those hash marks meant. Do you know what they mean? What they're, does it mean it's a different pavement?
I don't know the answer to that, but the applicant is here.
Okay, I
And they
can
can
wait.
probably answer it better than I can. I'm just pulling up the plans to see if I can figure it out while we're talking.
And as far as demolishing, would you like me to hold off on that, or would you answer demolishing question? Is that appropriate for me to ask you or ask the applicant?
Why don't you try me first?
Okay, so once there's a demolishing happening, does that include all sewers, all utilities, and all the drains that come in, water drainage from Belvedere Island? Does everything get taken away?
I think that's probably better for the applicant.
Okay.
It's sort of not my
Okay.
specialty.
Okay. I'll wait then. Then I had a question about the shared street. And again, there was a recommendation for textured pavement on the access easement. And I did look online to see what the definition of shared street was, but I didn't find anything that talked about textured pavement. So does anybody know about textured pavement?
I think that the textured pavement was a recommendation of the, in the traffic study that was done for the project. It suggested various features that would suggest that the street is intended to be shared by pedestrians and vehicles. And one of the suggestions was textured pavement,
Correct.
as well as traffic calming devices. So.
Right. I
So-
just wondered about the textured pavement, like, is it going to be 1776 type of?
I doubt it'll be
bumpy?
cobblestones.
Yeah. Is it,
Um,
I'm just curious because I think if people live there and if they are pushing a stroller or perhaps using a walker or in a wheelchair, I was curious about the textured pavement, not because I care about the design so much as I'm concerned about residents who might have to actually be on it and use it. And so I wasn't sure how bumpy it would be or how smooth or any of that.
I mean, you could specify that, you know, it needs to be, it would need to remain disabled accessible, which I think would cut out cobblestones. I think probably, you know, this, we're getting into planning and engineering here. You're probably talking about something more like a stamped, you know, kind of a stamped, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in my experience, it's also included up to including, you know, modest speed bumps, pavement ridging, slotting of some sorts, basically to demark it as a slower zone. But I think our city attorney is correct in the sense that it's ultimately a design function that broadly meets the criteria.
And then I did want to clarify, because there was some issue with the curbs and everything at the Planning Commission. People asked and were told that it was a rolled curb, that then I read it's actually a monolith curb. So I just want to clarify that it is, I'm assuming it is the monolith curb, even though the planning commissioners were making their decisions based on roll curbs.
That is correct. It is a vertical curb.
Okay. And part of the shared street that I did also see, many of them actually eliminate curbs, and the street just goes straight out. And I thought, well, if they can eliminate a sidewalk, why not eliminate a curb? And then you get an extra foot. I mean, the road could be 21 feet wide instead of 20. So anyway, I was just, the shared street offers a lot of different choices, and I guess they'll have to be made as it moves forward if this is a decision that gets pushed through.
Yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
think, yeah.
Or
and the
agreed
curb
to.
Could be there for drainage purposes.
Okay.
too. Yeah.
And then I was wondering about grading and what the anticipated change in grading from now would be. Is that a question to go to the, okay, great. I had a couple of questions on the resolution
Sure.
items. On number 16, it said that the subdivision improvement agreement will be established by the city engineer. And I was curious, is that our contracted engineer, or would that be our associate engineer, Chris Berry? Would we still be using a contractor engineer for this project?
Yes, we would mostly send it out to Code Source, John Moe. We'd have a few engineers reviewing it.
Okay.
Along with our Public Works Director as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then on 17, there was a mention of public improvement plan. And is that a requirement prior to the final map
Yes,
when that gets submitted?
yes.
Okay. And I had a question about the Belvedere design and construction standards, but that was cleared up, so I don't need to ask that. And then I wondered about number 21, talked about reports for the projects here. And I wondered if there were plans to have any updated reports, since several of them were written almost 3 years now, and by the time this gets going, it could be 4 years old. And I know some of them were written in the middle of COVID, and there were issues going on at that time that patterns have changed since then in the usage of that area. And also, we've learned an awful lot about geotech and hydraulics and hydrology reports, and I wondered if those might be updated.
Our previous, let me jump in real quick. Our previous conditions approved by the Planning Commission already requires a design level geotechnical report. So that one will certainly be updated. I don't know about the other ones.
Stormwater. There's various conditions about updating the stormwater reports, you know, the stormwater drainage and so forth reports to be at a much finer level of detail.
That come in for the final map.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Number 28 talked about project benchmarks shall be based on city approval benchmark. And I wondered what that meant. Like, are there types of benchmarks? What would be the benchmarks and who would do the approval of this? I didn't know what this was referring to.
Might be a best question for a city engineer. I believe it's referring to surveying work.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, generally the city's engineer is the one that approves any survey reports and survey data that's submitted by the applicant.
He is here on Zoom too.
Oh, okay. Number 37 talks about improvement plans for Mallard Drive. So I just thought maybe we could clarify, since this access easement, Mallard Drive has been referred to as Mallard Road, Mallard Drive, a private way, a driveway, an access easement, and a street. So I just wondered, maybe I should save this and ask the applicant if they have a preference or have decided how they would see Mallard Road, because I think in all the plan reports that have come in, it's actually been talked about as a road and not an access easement. That the first time that came up was at the Planning Commission meeting in March. So, we do have quite a few ordinances that discuss how many lots are on a drive and way and et cetera. And so I guess my question is, why isn't it a private street? Or private road?
I'm going to defer to John Moe and then possibly add something to his answer.
Okay.
Okay, hi, John Moe, Contract City Engineer. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, well, it was proposed as a private access easement, and the map does identify it as Mallard Road. So I think this this condition number 37, condition of approval for consistency, may be appropriate to make it Mallard Road, to be consistent with the map.
Right. So we would refer to it as Mallard Road, not access easement.
Correct.
Okay. So is there a reason why then it's not treated as a road, a private road? Why? I'm assuming because it's a road that we consider it a road, but it's been called so many different things that I actually at this point don't even know what to call it.
I
Well,
think
go ahead.
I'll just be brief. I think sort of, when you're looking at a set of plans, it's much easier for somebody to understand if it's labeled Mallard Road, right? Whether it gets treated as an actual private road or public road based on that label on the plans, I think is it's a matter of semantics. And so the city never treated it as a road, but if the applicant probably had put Mallard private access easement drive, I think there might have been some confusion, right? So I think, we're dealing with the code and then sort of clarity on plans. But John, go ahead and add more.
No, I think you covered that well.
Thank you.
Okay. let's see. So under the conditions of approval, I had some questions about number 67 to 73. And I was curious about how do these conditions translate once you have different owners? So are we considering, like in 68, does the applicant refer to Thompson Dorfman as the applicant of record? Or would some of these actually apply to the eventual owner of the parcels? Because it seems like once the subdivision occurs, Thompson Dorfman is no longer the applicant.
So each lot will receive an individual building permit.
Okay.
These conditions will apply to each individual building
Okay.
permit,
Okay.
whoever the owner is.
Whoever the owner is. So
Yes.
at the time, once someone buys it, then they would get these conditions.
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. And then there was at 72O, it says post a publicly visible sign with phone number and name of person to contact regarding dust complaints. But the Construction Impact Committee actually has a whole bunch of things we'd like to see posted on those types of signs. So I was wondering if there was a special reason that it was only about dust complaints and not more inclusive of other.
These are the Bay Area Quality Management District's BMPs. And so that's what we would
So
go by.
that's why it's that specific.
That's why they're there, yes. But if there's more specifics, then perhaps we can add those or.
Okay. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca, just a few, I have a question about sequencing, and this has to do with sort of conditional next steps. In particular, I've got a list of a few things and I've sort of answered them as we've gone through it. With this approval of this map and the subsequent work, how can the community be assured that the number of units will be built, that the affordable housing inherent in this approval will in fact be built, that utility improvements will be done, that the implementation and planning of the stormwater control plan, you've got it, it's listed here prior to issuance of a building permit. And I think there's some nuance there that we need to sort of look at, because I believe the affordability is probably taken care of in the design review resolution, but arguably they could throw that out. Will it be recorded in the map that lot 1 would have the requirement to have 4 affordable units? Sorry, lot, I apologize, the apartment. Yeah, 1, I guess, or 12, whichever it is, I'm not sure. Because I don't know that it's enough to put it in the design review conditions, because arguably that design review could be abandoned.
Yes, it is in the design review resolution. I think we're just looking, we have it in the tentative map resolution as well. But go ahead, Barb.
But does it get recorded along with lot 12?
So starting with condition number 6. So an affordable housing agreement has to be recorded before the final map is approved. And the agreement has to say, the agreement will require that construction of the 4 replacement housing units, which are the 4 low-income units, be done in the first phase of development. And then it goes on about what the incomes are.
Okay.
Yeah.
And related to that, the replacement agreement is at a later stage. Can that be elevated as well to prior to the submission of the final map? Because again, the replacement agreement is a condition later on in the process.
No, the replacement agreement has to be recorded before
Okay.
the final map can be.
I didn't see that.
approved. Yeah, it's, condition 6 says that, prior to approval of the final map, the applicant shall enter into an affordable housing agreement with the city.
But
that
that's
will
affordable
be
housing agreement,
recorded.
not the replacement agreement for the tenants already there.
Oh.
We reference a replacement agreement, sorry, relocation or a
Oh,
replacement
the
agreement.
relocation.
Yes.
This is also prior to the final map, that the city shall retain a relocation
Okay.
consultant to make sure that the applicants get the benefits. And that's also prior to approval of the final map. The city has to verify that all lower income tenants have received
Okay.
the relocation benefits they're entitled to. Also provide contact information so they can be informed of their rights should the project now proceed. So anyway, this is all before the final map can be approved.
Okay. I've got some comments on the conditions, so I'll pause on those later in the resolution. But thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Seeing no more questions to city staff, I'll turn it over to the applicant for a presentation and to respond to questions.
Good evening, Mayor Mark and council members. I want to thank the city's elected and appointed officials for their involvement, detailed preparation, and leadership in reviewing the Mallard Point application. I also want to thank the city staff for its hard work and diligence in reviewing and processing our project. While the initial plan was based on considerable city input, the Mallard Point design has evolved further as recommended by additional design suggestions from the community. We feel that through this process, we have created a wonderful and very livable plan that reflects the quality architecture, scenic environment, and community needs of Belvedere. We are pleased to move forward with this design and the design that this collaboration has created. We don't have a formal presentation tonight, but we are prepared to answer any questions you may have. Joining me this evening are our counsel, Riley Hurd, landscape architect Paul Lettieri of the Gazzardo Partnership, and our civil engineer Chris Mills of BKF. Let us know if you have any questions. Thanks again for your time and efforts.
Thank you. Councilman Cooper, do you want to ask the applicant the questions you had?
Sure. I think you've already heard my questions, but I'll start at the top, which is I was wondering what the sort of different colored with hash marks, grayed out marks meant on the driveway down to parcel 5 and then above it on a circle.
That is decorative pavement. And with regard to the comment, the related comment about accessibility, in 1990, I believe, ADA, the American with Disabilities Act, was passed, and it addresses the requirements to provide accessibility. So the questions about having cobbles that prohibit access, those sorts of materials or patterns are not allowed.
Okay, thank you. So are you referring to accessibility, say, as a path of access to the home, accessible path of access
Correct.
to home?
Correct.
Okay. Well, so I guess even though I wasn't going to go there, wouldn't ADA accessible path include sidewalks so that they would have safety
No,
as a way to get to their unit? No,
they do not. It does
Okay.
not.
it does not. Okay. Let's see. So when everything is demolished, does that include all the sewers, all the utilities, and the drains that exist to
Um,
taking the water from the island?
Well, we certainly hope not, by virtue of the fact that we've been, as you may be aware, we've replaced our sanitary sewer lines. And so we're hoping that certainly some of the systems can be replaced, but anything that needs to be replaced will be replaced through this process.
I was wondering about the drain. There's a major culvert that comes down and pipe that takes
Correct, and
most
it-
of the water from the north part of the island, I think, and right now it goes right through the middle, but I was told that that is going to be redesigned around. Is that correct?
It is being replaced.
It is being replaced.
Correct.
Okay, so since it's presumably coming out, and that's why it's being replaced, what happens during the demolishing stage until it is rebuilt? What happens to all the water?
Because you're asking a very technical question, I'm going to bring up our technical expert, Chris Mills of BKF, and he can
Okay.
answer that directly.
Hi,
Oh, I'm Chris Mills with BKF Engineers.
how do you do?
Happy to be here.
So I was curious about the large pipes, I guess, or drains, I don't know the technical term, that take all the water from Belvedere Island and then out underneath the current units, and then it empties out into the outflow of the Belvedere Lagoon. And I was curious about what happens to all the water when you demolish everything and you remove everything. Then where does all that water go that used to go in a pipe?
Well, the short answer to that is that the contractor will not remove that pipe until summer, basically. So he doesn't have, or she doesn't have a big issue with rain coming off the
Okay.
hill. To the extent there is rain in the forecast, he would have to build temporary facilities to get the water across the site.
Okay.
Along with all the SWIP rules with stormwater pollution prevention plans.
And then it appears on the plans that it kind of comes down and takes a sharp turn and then would continue on under the road and back out to that same outflow?
Correct.
And so in your experience, does that type of sharp turn constrict the flow of water at all?
It could, but we've taken that into account in the hydraulic calculations
Okay,
with the size of the pipe.
of the size.
Yep.
Okay. And so you don't feel that by altering the flow of water, you have enough expertise and you've done enough studying that you don't need additional information?
No, we don't need additional information.
Okay.
It works as it's shown.
Okay, okay, thank you. Let's see, and then I don't think this one's for you because it's about grading. I don't know who does grading.
That
Oh,
might be me.
same guy, okay. You wear different hats.
Yeah.
So I was curious in the grading that was described on if you can anticipate an estimate of how much grading might change what's there right now.
Well, very little because we're keeping the ground where the units are now at roughly the same elevation in the proposed condition. So there's very little grading. The only grading really is to raise and lower the road. So the road will go up and down so that we can control where the stormwater goes so that it gets into the proper treatment
Okay.
basins.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for answering that. Let me just see here. So, I guess I'll go back to the question of the road to perhaps Mr. Dorfman. And in your project descriptions of January 22 and May 2023, you wrote the current width of Mallard Road does not comply with fire department requirements. So it would be reconfigured and moved to accommodate the proposed site plan, as well as widened to conform with city standards and provide emergency vehicle access. Mallard Road would remain private. So I was just curious, what happened? Like, what changed that widening the road didn't happen?
The road width and the road path is actually, right now, the situation that exists is we have parking on both sides of the road. So there isn't a approved path of travel for fire if you were to rebuild Mallard Point as it is right now. It doesn't comply. The new circulation pattern that we have has the 20-foot wide road width, which allows 2 fire trucks to pass, which is as mandated by code and mandated by the fire marshal.
So widening it meant putting in no parking signs.
Removing parking
Okay.
and the like. Correct.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Oh, do you have a preference for what Mallard Road how it should be thought about?
I don't have a preference on that.
Okay.
I think that from an addressing standpoint, calling it Mallard Easement would be kind of strange, but
I think so too.
yeah.
I was wondering how
But I
you
think-
had the exact same reaction I did. Was, do you live at one easement way or access easement? I know it sounds silly, but you brought it up. I wasn't going to. So thank you for that. And I think those are the only questions I have.
Thank you. Are there any other questions I can answer?
Evening, Bruce. Firstly, I wanted to just thank you for the flexibility that you have shown in working with the community to adapt the apartment building, which I think is a big improvement. So thank you for the flexibility there. The questions I have actually aren't necessarily related to the decisions today, but it was more just clarification for me and maybe for the community more broadly, just in terms of timelines of things going forward. So my understanding is that demolition, utilities, bulkheads will all be done as soon as all of the permitting and so forth is
Correct.
through. How long do you think, once you have all the permits, how long do you think that first step takes?
Well, we're hoping, if all should go well tonight, that we will be able to get through the permitting process, including all the all the state and federal agencies that we have to work with by the third quarter or during the third quarter of 2025. And I think that will start a 6-month to 12-month process for putting in the infrastructure and doing the work that you're referring to.
Okay. And then the next step after that is to sell the single family home lots, or?
Well, again,
I'm sorry. The next step is then to sell the single family lots?
yes. Well, actually, the sales process for those single family lots would likely start during the permitting process. So sometime over the next year, I would imagine that we will kick off some sort of marketing activities.
Okay, so in terms of timeline, then when do you anticipate the fourplexes, triplexes, et cetera, being actually constructed?
Well, the inner circle would be constructed. We've committed to constructing that first. That also has the affordable units in it, in the apartment building, as well as the townhomes, the 7 townhome units that are located on lot 12. I would anticipate that those would start construction soon after the infrastructure is put into place.
Is that contingent on financing and financing conditions?
Everything's ultimately contingent on the market, but we're feeling very good about that right now.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Just one quick question. You mentioned to Councilmember Cooper about the ADA lack of requirements. Is that because it's a private property, or because there's access through the roadway?
Well, actually, I will. Who wants to answer that one? Where's Chris? Chris, you want to answer that? I'm going to give you an engineer's answer
Okay.
about accessibility requirements.
Yeah, the accessibility requirements are really about the multifamily units. So there needs to be paths of travel from the public right of way to the
Got it.
to the multifamily buildings.
So
To each individual lot, they're not required to be able to,
so it's 112 and 2.
yeah.
Got it.
112.2.
It's just 1 and 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for the applicants? No? Seeing none, thank you very much. I'll now open it up to public comment. Anybody in the room like to make a comment? Please. I'm sorry. To press the button there? Oh,
Oh, there we go.
there you go.
I don't purport to be an engineer, but I've lived here in Belvedere for 30 years on San Rafael Avenue. It's 13 feet above sea level, and our sump pumps run all year round. So summer, there is still water coming down off the hill. So I think they should be aware of that. They don't live here. They're lower than we are. And if there's some culvert that goes underneath the ground, it's going to have water in it coming down from the springs and other places up on the hill. And I'd also like to say about the sidewalks, they're just dancing around that. And it's really unconscionable to say, oh, people like to walk in the street. Oh, it'll be textured. Oh, there's plenty of room. It's really a shame that the city staff didn't pick up on this, that nobody questioned it, that we've gotten to the first time it comes to city council and oh, it's too late. So I just really think that it's just a shame.
Please.
Mike, you push the button.
Okay. Jill Barnett, 50 Peninsula Road. We're here this evening because a big mistake was made 3 years ago in May of 2021. It was then that the town manager, Craig Middleton, and the city planner, Irene Borba, corresponded with Thompson Dorfman, telling them, quote, Belvedere was not contesting their assertion that there was any inconsistency between R2 zoning and the general plan. Middleton wrote, I hope this provides the clarity that you need in order to proceed. We knew then, and we know now, that there was no inconsistency, yet this project was allowed to continue to its current state. And unfortunately, more mistakes were made along the way. Hiring Ascent Consulting firm and using their faulty and incomplete report to recommend a CEQA review was not required. The traffic report was misleading. It was prepared in the middle of COVID, in the middle of an afternoon, in the middle of the week. The geotechnical report offered by a renowned geotechnical engineer, Lawrence Karp, was ignored. Forms submitted by the applicant contained errors or were not complete. They were not questioned and often not corrected. I could go on with more details, but I only have 3 minutes. So what can we do at this point? Let's not make any more mistakes. As we are not going to have a CEQA review, Mayor Mark has stated we can do all the monitoring ourselves. This is the largest development project Belvedere has undertaken in more than 50 years. Given all the mistakes that have been made, I am not alone in thinking that our staff does not have the bandwidth to adequately do this job and continue with their other activities. When presented to Mayor Mark, he stated he would be willing to hire an outside project manager to monitor the project, this major project. I think this is a good idea. Someone who will not be supervised by the developer. This person should report to everyone, the city council, the staff, and reports should be made available to the public. Lack of transparency has also been a mistake. There have been virtually no open discussions or interactions with the residents of Belvedere. Sure, we have written letters and come to the planning commission meeting and the city council meetings, but feels like it's all one-sided. Perhaps this is because this is the way public meetings are structured. Is this by design? You perhaps read our letters and then listened to our comments, but there is no discussion. There were no comments. There is no compromise. You show no interest in understanding our perspective. You just vote on what the staff with mistakes has presented to you, and that's it. So I'm proposing that in addition to a non-staff project manager, you hold status meetings with the public where there's an opportunity to discuss and give input. Place timely and current status reports on the city website, give updates in the Belvedere Breeze, keep the public informed and involved so no more mistakes are made. In case there are mistakes and property is damaged, I recommend there be a construction bond provided by the developer for residents. I strongly suggest that the council work within the state mandates and work to fulfill the wishes of the Belvedere residents. Let's see if you can do both. We have the best and brightest in this community. Let's work together on this project so we don't have any more mistakes. Thank you.
I'm Tom Cromwell. I live at 59 Peninsula Road, and I also chair the Belvedere Tiburon Joint Disaster Advisory Council, and we're concerned about public safety. I'm concerned in this discussion that we're arguing about what we're going to call the roads without really giving adequate help to the fire department to require the size road they need. They need 25 feet. Under a certain amount of duress, they agreed to 20 feet with arguing about the curbs. Let's give them 25 feet, which they need to maneuver their equipment, especially in the event of a disaster with a raging fire. Otherwise, that's a potential disaster waiting to happen. I'm also concerned about the comment that was made about sidewalks. We're going to allow an entirely new development without sidewalks. Now, this is an aging population. Many people in this community get their exercise by walking on sidewalks. What are we going to expect them down at Mallard Point? We want them to go out and walk in the streets? That again is a threat to public safety. So please rectify those two things.
Try again. Hello, can you hear me? Hi, I'm Susan Clough, 9 Peninsula Road. I've written you quite a lot of letters, and I've written you another long one and given you a map of this culvert, which exists immediately across the property going underneath the apartment buildings, which carries, according to the applicant's own early reports, at least 20 acres of uphill stormwater through the property. So I'm absolutely concerned of this. I mentioned this at several meetings, brought it to staff, brought it to other people's, and it still doesn't seem to be on the map. You would have to look at something called T3 and see where the outlet comes in and then the existing outlet, and then have heard today's conversation to know about that. My point is mostly got to do with do you have enough information to do your jobs on this report? And my feeling is you do not. According to state law, you're supposed to make sure the streets, improvements, and utilities are adequate for the development and will not adversely affect nearby residents. The project will be properly completed by the subdivider and not put a burden on the community or taxpayers, and that there are no threats to public safety. But the map does not appear to be complete. It's not even labeled tentative map and doesn't include all the required information or detail all of the consistencies with general plan policies, regulations, codes. This forces you, staff, and the public to pour through all sorts of various dated, different, and revised documents to find that information. Secondly, their own application in the packet contains false information. The signed subdivision and condo application dated 1/13/23. The applicant checked no to changing ground contours, no to changing scenic vistas and views, no to changing pattern, scale, or character, and no to changing any drainage patterns, which we clearly know is not true. There are a number of boundary issues that are unresolved. Their map shows boundary issues with decks and docks over adjacent property lines to the south and BLPOA waters. Project docks, in the project summary, docks are called floating docks, but staff tells me they are existing docks that will be repaired in the same location. Which is it? The draft conditions approval maybe say that these will not be able to be done unless they have an agreement with BLPOA. The roadways we've talked a little bit about are non-compliant. When you look at the actual staff letters of compliance letters, which apparently did not pull this out, they said actually, they do not have enough information to determine general plan and code compliance, that additional applications or project notifications may be needed to address the consistencies, and acceptance does not indicate city approval. Last but not least, the city drainage easement is missing. It's a major drainage easement. And also NFIP, regulations for all new development in FEMA flood zones say that the applicant must provide evidence that there be no rise in flood elevations. And I've given you the quotations from that. So I would like you to please get this information so you can make the right decisions. Make sure that all of these approvals are correct before you approve a map that may very well end in a problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any additional comment? Please, Mr. Johnson.
Good evening. Let's hit the button.
No, you just press it one more time.
Everybody okay?
Yep.
Oh, good. Sound like Rothman. Can you hear me? My good friend. Let me see here. I didn't come here with the agenda or previously thoughts about this at all, but I came here to observe, and I wrote a few notes here, and I have more questions, I think, than asking people what to do. And what kind of drew my attention is the last couple of comments by the applicant, which said selling of individual lots within the permitting process. Coming back to our original BLPOA issue, when are the bulkheads going to be built? When are we going to know when, within the sequence, that's going to occur? And it seems to me that if the individual lots are going to be sold during quote unquote the permitting process, the applicant is not going to own the property in which the bulkhead needs to be built. So that's a question. The other question I had was the new design, and the words replaced was used. And to me, replaced can be in the same place or a different place, but it's replaced. I would like some assurance that it's not going to be an additional water flow into the BLPOA property and to lagoon waters. In regard to some comment about docks, I believe the map shows most of the docks on what I call the east side within the property owner's boundary. But I don't believe they're in the same place as those docks are currently, which means they would be replaced in a different part. And may I remind everyone that just because it's not BOA property, the water on the private property brings in the BLPOA jurisdiction because of our duty to preserve and protect. I think that was it, except for the grading. One last question. My understanding is FEMA requires additional foundations. I'm not sure what the numbers are on this grade, but when is that, they say no land infill, is this all, within the FEMA requirements, or what's going on there? And I don't understand, again, what the sequence is of when the movement is going to be occurring, again, in relationship to the very necessary bulkheads that are non-existent on the property for all practical purposes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment in the room? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Jenna Watson.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenna Watson. I live on Oak Avenue, up on the hill. I also am a practicing attorney, and I work a lot with affordable housing and multifamily housing finance. I wanted to ask some questions about the regulatory agreement that was mentioned earlier in the meeting. For how long are the units required to be restricted? And I assume that they're restricted both by the rent that can be charged and the income of the resident. What are the parameters around the requirement for both the number of affordable units and for the total percentage of total rentable square feet of the entire building? And with whom is the regulatory agreement going to be?
Thank you, Ms. Watson. Correct me if I'm wrong, 55 years, 4 units, bedroom sizes are stipulated and square footage are stipulated in the agreement condition. I don't know who it's with. I imagine it's with the city.
Okay, but thank you very much, Mayor. I actually meant not necessarily the city, but who is the responsible party, so that if there's a violation, who can the city seek redress from?
I mean, the affordable housing agreement will be with the city. It'll be an agreement with the city, and the city can enforce it.
And the applicant, presumably.
Yes, and the applicant, but it runs with the land. So regardless of who the owner is, it runs with the land, and we've actually enforced some of these agreements.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
William Rothman.
Go ahead, Mr. Rothman.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I really don't understand that much about the planning process, but I would like to give this input about what I've heard. When the seawall was being considered and there was an EIR done for it, it was said that if damage occurs from the different pile driving and whatever was involved, it said in the EIR, the city will pay for repairs to houses in the neighborhood that get damaged because of the work. I would appreciate you explaining if that culvert thing, if the water flows the wrong way and damages neighboring properties, who will pay for it? The second is sidewalks. I was driving today and often up on the hill there, and I see people, we have some young people with children, and they're wheeling the children in strollers and carriages along Belvedere Avenue and other places. And I say to myself, my God, this is dangerous. Someone's going to get killed here. I wish we had sidewalks. Now, down by the lagoon, there are a significant number of older people. Many people move down to the lagoon as their mobility decreases, and they want to be able to walk to town to do their shopping, to go on living the life to the extent that they can, that they've enjoyed before. I think that sidewalks are very important. And also, if you want young people with children to be safe and to want to live in an area, I really think you should provide sidewalks. Now, up on the island, I frankly wish that no permits would be granted for new houses without providing a sidewalk. But that's water over the dam. But here you have a situation where you actually can have a sidewalk. You can have a situation that's friendly and safe for older people and for children. And I can't imagine why you wouldn't have a sidewalk. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Mayor Mark, out of the 21 attendees, there are no other hands raised.
Thank you very much. I will now close the public comment period and bring it back for deliberation. Although prior to doing that, can I ask our city staff and our city attorneys to comment on question Mr. Rothman brought up, but also has come into us a couple times in letters about the liability issue. Just address the issue associated with work for this project, or frankly, for any construction project that takes place, and there's damage to city infrastructure, private property, and who's responsible, and in what manner is that remedied?
Well, basically the developer, the contractor, the people involved in the construction are those who would be considered liable. In terms of the Subdivision Map Act requires that the developer enter into a subdivision improvement agreement, which will include all the public improvements. And for those, the developer is required to bond, both a completion bond and there's another bond, sorry. But anyway, they're required to significantly bond. One of the conditions of the design review, however, is that the developer have a significant insurance policy, and also that if permission is granted, videotape, video the adjacent home properties before construction starts to verify, what the condition is and if the project in fact causes additional cracking and so forth. But if the project causes, I think that the trick, if the project causes damages, is to make sure that the developer has adequate insurance, to be honest.
And that's a function of the public improvement plan. It's documented there, because I noticed the bond. We talk about the exoneration of the bond, but we don't talk about the bond itself necessarily. Is it inherent in the requirement for the improvement plan?
Yes, the Subdivision Map Act, in fact, requires security.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it would probably behoove concerned neighboring property owners to, work with the developer to get videotape records of
Yes.
properties and so forth. So you have
would-
a record of what a before situation is.
Right. It would be in their interest.
I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further deliberation comments by the council?
Go ahead.
I actually wanted to follow up on some of the questions that were asked during public comment. And I think Ken's questions in particular were important in terms of selling, and I didn't follow up when I asked the question in terms of selling units while you're still getting permits and what that does mean in terms of the bulkhead. So I wanted to see if the developer could just come up and explain that.
For clarification, specifically, once as part of demolition and infrastructure, we're replacing the bulkheads. That's a developer responsibility. Number two, as I mentioned, we're looking at marketing. We can't close on any sale until the map is in place at the earliest. So that wouldn't be occurring out of sequence either.
Okay, thank you.
And a quick question for staff. This arises from the letter that Ms. Clough wrote to us that was on the dais here and that she raised at the podium this evening about the drainage easement that is missing. And I wonder if staff can address that question.
Yeah,
It is on the drainage plan, on the existing conditions. There's the point, and then to the right of the point, it shows that drainage discharge coming out on the plans.
Yeah, just to add to that, it is actually on sheet TM-3A. And as Rebecca stated, there's 2 easements that are called out between lot 8 and 7 and lot 11. There's a line detail that shows the easement locations.
Right, so I'm familiar with the maps and the depiction of the drainage pipes. I think the question that was raised, or as I understood it was, is it a recorded legal easement that is reflected anywhere?
I think so. That I know that's not a great answer. It's yeah. We have another map that show on this a map provided by the Director of Public Works shows it on a city storm drain map. I'm not quite sure where that's from. Maybe the applicant can answer or their engineer can answer.
Can I ask for clarification on one thing as perhaps he's approaching? Clearly, the project through its improvement plans, its development plans, needs to be subject to these requirements. But is a planning subdivision map approval a requirement of those determinations? What I'm getting at is I understand the project is required to satisfy all those requirements, as Ms. Clough pointed out, and many others. But is identifying them all and us approving them, that seems way beyond our scope. To me, I would think that our job is to approve the process by which those are adequately addressed.
Yeah, the map is supposed to extinguish the easements. So by recording the map is supposed to show all the easements to be extinguished. So, sorry, I haven't looked at the maps in detail, but perhaps we can ask the applicant where that's shown.
I'm sorry. So the question is about, I don't believe there is an existing storm drain easement there, but there will be there is one that will be created with the final map for the new drainage alignment. So that's the easements that are on sheet TM-3A.
But there's also between lots 7 and 8, it says connect to existing storm drain outfall.
Right, so that's going to remain.
So that'll be the outfall. There's not necessarily an easement recorded there, a storm drain.
Not
easement.
now, right?
Not now.
But there will be.
Right.
When the map records, when the final map records.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, it does.
Can I just, I wanted to go back to the question of private road versus private access easement, because obviously this has been raised many times, and I just wanted to see if we could put this to. Sorry, I have a problem with my mic, I guess. As I say, there's been a lot of discussion about private road versus private access easement, and I wanted to make sure that it was discussed at the Planning Commission meeting, but I just want to make sure that we're clear on it tonight. So even if we had deemed this to be a private road instead of a private access easement, the developer at that point instead would have requested a waiver.
We would assume so, yes.
And we would have no choice, because this is a density bonus project, but to accept that waiver.
The only, excuse me, the only way to deny a waiver is one, if it affects a historic structure, if it violates state or federal law, and then if it has a specific adverse impact, which has to be based on an objective standard that was in effect. So there was, a standard for private roads, but you have to demonstrate that it causes a significant adverse effect that cannot be mitigated. And there was no one from this, we were not able to have evidence that not having a sidewalk, which I'm in favor of as well, would have, there's no evidence of significant accidents and so forth. that we could point to demonstrate that it would have a significant adverse impact. Additionally, the impact cannot be mitigated. And we had here a report from the traffic engineer indicating that by putting in, various shared street features, it could be designed for both pedestrians and cars. So that was where we ended up.
So we have no legal authority to require a sidewalk.
Right. Also, we would have to establish the significant adverse impact by a preponderance of the evidence, not enough just to have substantial evidence, which is usually the city standard.
Okay, so if we here tonight to condition this on there being sidewalks, what would happen next?
Well, I mean, the applicant would have certain choices, correct? The applicant could modify the plan, the applicant could file suit. I'm not sure what, HCD could send you a notice of violation. I don't know what would happen.
Okay, but it sounds like none of those outcomes are good outcomes for the city of Belvedere.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Except for option one, if they modify their plans.
Yes, yes.
But my understanding is that there's been discussion with the developers to whether they would be able to modify their plan, correct?
I mean, the city made an effort to, it looked like with if the road was reduced to 16 feet in width with a 4-foot sidewalk, but the road would need to be one way at that point, and that was unacceptable for the fire department.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify one piece of that? Until a developer asks for a waiver, the city has the legal right to ensure that its ordinances are followed. If then there's a choice to ask for a waiver, then you get into, are we able to turn the waiver down or not? But until it's asked for, do we just hand out waivers without them being asked for?
Well, the difficulty at this point is that the project's been deemed consistent.
No, I understand that, but I'm just
Yeah,
talking
I'm
from a legal perspective because there was a lot of questions about legal that we have no choice.
So forgetting about the waiver entirely, there's kind of two issues going on here. One, it's been deemed consistent. And then because it's considered consistent with your objective standards, because of this, you would still need to make that health and safety finding, basically very the specific health or safety impact. And you would need to make that finding by a preponderance of the evidence. So that makes it difficult to find. Another problem is that the city engineer has made a determination that the project was consistent. And so there's another provision of the Housing Accountability Act that states that unless, if there's substantial evidence that in the record that the project is consistent, which is sufficient to allow a reasonable person to conclude it's consistent, then also it's considered to be consistent. The lead case on this was the San Mateo case where the staff found that the project was consistent. The commission and the council disagreed, and the court of appeals said that, well, there's disagreement here. So one, that means the standard is not so objective. And secondly, it means that there's no established policy that would allow us to give deference to the city. So in this particular case, it's like a variety of these provisions that the legislature has adopted in the last few years are really working against the city.
We're fully aware of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess perhaps I didn't ask this properly, or maybe there isn't, maybe I'm off base totally. But I think what I was asking is that right now, our code for any other subdivision, in our subdivision code, it states that if the primary access to over 5 units is considered a street. It's not considered anything other than a street. That's our code. So this would be serving 17 units, I think, the Mallard Road. So that's certainly more than 5, which means that our code says it is subject to our subdivision codes by virtue of the fact that it's serving 17 units, not 5 or less. So at the very beginning, the reason our subdivision code is not being followed has nothing to do with state law. It has to do with that no one noticed that. Nobody noticed it, and therefore it was deemed compliant. Is that correct?
I wouldn't, I think there was a different interpretation of the code applied to the project. I think if you look at the inconsistency level letters, there was quite a detailed analysis of conformance with various public works conditions. And I think the city engineer made an interpretation that that provision didn't apply.
Because he wasn't following our ordinances of more than 5 units being called a street. So anyway, I'm not going to belabor it. I think there's a lot of, I think it's easy to hide behind HCD and the state, but I think there were options, and we don't know. We can't assume HCD would come on us. We can't assume somebody's going to sue us. We can't assume, but yet that seems to be the answer for everything. Thank you.
Can I go back to, sorry, Ken, do you want to?
Mr. Mayor, point of order, may I ask a question?
We'll open the public comment for a brief comment.
It's a technical question on behalf of the BLPOA, which just came up this evening, again, regarding the selling of lots. Does the city have the authority to grant a tentative map over property that's not owned by the applicant? Specifically, the BLPOA property is included in this tentative map. If you approve that, are you giving away BOA authority over its own property
No.
without BOA approval? Thank you.
Thank you.
The tentative map shows, shows some BLPOA property, but it's not within the boundaries of the tentative map. It's only creating lots that are owned by the applicant.
So the proposed improvements outside of the property boundary outlined in the tentative map are subject to the approval requirements and guidelines of BLPOA, but not arguably in the discretion of this tentative map.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
There's also various conditions of approval that say that any improvements proposed on BLPOA property need BLPOA approval.
Thank you.
I'd like to go back to the comment that Jill made about communication around construction, which I think is a very important point, because this is a significant project in our city. And I would like us to have some discussion around what that might look like so that the community can give input and that we give off status updates. So I think it would be good to flesh that out. I don't know whether this is an appropriate time, but I think that's a very important point.
Yeah, I think there's 2 points there. One is both brought up by Ms. Barnett. One is the aspect of project oversight, and the second is communications and transparency associated with that. You're absolutely right. I've said from the get-go that I don't believe we have the bandwidth in our organization, in our city, to oversee and to manage and to review the ongoing construction development of a project this large, while still maintaining the services adequately for the balance of the city, which won't stop dead. We'll continue to move forward. Later on this evening, we're looking at a preliminary budget for 24-25. We will need to, and we haven't done this analysis yet thoroughly in the budget, but we have looked at it anecdotally, that in the 25-26 budget, we're going to have to look at obviously anticipated fees, anticipated revenue associated with this project, the reviewing and the oversight responsibilities, and subsequently the staffing required for this. So I fully expect and understand and believe, and I think we've had some positive conversations with Rebecca and Robert about this, is to outline a review process, the personnel associated with that, and who and how they communicate this to both the city staff and the building and planning departments, and subsequently to city council and the community themselves. So absolutely, that's a big point which needs to be figured out. Fortunately, we have a little time with this, and we can and we should address that. The other issue, as far as transparency and communication, I know we've had some debate about whether it's our responsibility to post as is required by the state, and or do we go beyond that and provide a narrative and communicate everything and anything associated with the project. Frankly, I believe we have to meet the posting requirements. I don't know that we can ultimately set an expectation to communicate absolutely everything and tell the story out into the public. I'd love to do so, but I just don't know that's a realistic expectation. I mean, happy to have further communication about that. So, I mean, there's no doubt we have to meet the posting and communication requirements at all phases. And we've already set up a website. We should make every attempt to post to that, anything and everything. But to have and I know Jill talked about the type of understand the perspective of the community and be transparent about it and tell that story and the narrative. I want to be careful about setting those expectations, because I don't know that we'll be able to do that to the expectations of the community.
I mean, I'd love to hear from the applicant, because they've done projects in other communities, about what kind of communication has been either required or they have volunteered to implement in other communities during construction.
Well, I would say that each one of the programs that we instituted was a function of the communities in which we were in, and specifically their requirements. We have always put together a website that provides regular updates for anybody to receive notification from, as well as maintain email lists to the extent folks want to give us information if there's, or have us contact them to the extent there's notices that they want to be aware of.
So that is a two-way communication where members of the community can reach out and you have a representative who will contact those people.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe we can try to, as Councilmember Wilkinson said, maybe we can try to continue discussing this and see if we can figure out ways that we can do that within our own community and not rely on an outside person to give out our messaging.
Or do it together. I mean, I don't mean together, but make sure they're mutually supportive. Councilmember Lynch, any comments or thoughts?
No further comments or thoughts at this time.
Okay. So do we have any thoughts on moving the two motions forward? I'm going to skip ahead real quickly to the revocable license. I don't have any objection to the revocable license. I think that the 1 foot of area through a majority of the property and the turning of the corner on the other lot are well within our parameters for revocable licenses. It is an improvement for the community, and it benefits it both from a lighting and a landscape perspective. If there are any further comments on that, certainly entertain them now, or perhaps we could make a motion for the revocable license should anyone have one.
I'll make the motion to approve the revocable license.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. For the tentative map, if I can make a couple comments that I looked at, and a couple ones relative to the resolution itself. To Mr. Johnson's point, and I appreciate the comment made by Mr. Dorfman about the sequencing, in particular to the bulkhead. I would recommend, though, that we mirror the condition in the design review approval related to the bulkhead. That's condition number 5 and number 13E of the design review approval in this resolution as well, just so that the sequencing is clear. Because I wouldn't want the design review application to disappear. They're not going to do that project. I'd like it to be resident in this resolution as well. You answered my question about there's a prior to condition number 76, there was a discussion about the bond exoneration, and it wasn't clear to me where the bond agreement condition existed, but you answered that it would be in the improvement plan and subject to the tentative map agreement itself. Condition number 73 discusses the construction management plan. The Planning Commission talked about that quite a bit. And again, under the mindset that the design review resolution is only valuable should they proceed with that project, and should they not be altered in such a way to receive a new design review approval. I believe that the conditions in the Planning Commission resolution regarding the construction management plan should be parallel with this one. In particular, parking, material storage, site signage, as Councilmember Cooper just talked about, and security are very light in this particular condition. They're much better in the planning condition. So that's number 70. I don't have the respective one in the planning one, but I think that should be improved in this one as well. The deposit agreement seems insufficient. It doesn't really lay out what the scope is, but I'm presuming this is number 23 in the resolution. I assume that is likewise further described in the improvement plan. But that's a question, because the deposit agreement is very vague here. It doesn't give it a scale, whereas resolutions number 66 does lay out the scale and the timing in a little more specific. So I wonder if those two could be brought into parallel a little better as far as the necessary deposits. And on the sidewalk issue, I think everyone has made it very clear that we would love to have a sidewalk there, and I think the applicant, and I've told the applicant that this myself personally, I think they're making a mistake not putting a sidewalk on this property. I think that it's a disservice to the new property owners who are going to live there and own the property. But that said, I'm not sure we have much recourse to require it, given the State Density Bonus Law, Housing Accountability Act, and so forth. I'm also very concerned about continuing or conditioning the project, because it puts the city, aside from the financial liability, puts the city in a streamlining jeopardy of the application itself, which would eliminate the possibility or the likelihood of our ability to condition the project as we are right now, if it's deemed complete. Am I correct about that?
Are you talking about the Permit Streamlining Act guideline?
I'm talking about SB 330 and the 60 days that's already been extended.
Right.
And
Well-
if the project's deemed complete through the legal means available, we would have limited or no ability at that point to condition an approval.
Well, it would be deemed approved.
That's my point. Yeah.
Yeah, not deemed complete, but deemed approved,
Yeah.
yeah. And the applicant's only given an extension to today. Yeah.
I would like to consider making and I don't know where the provision of this happens, but it certainly was the recommendation of the Planning Commission to advise the applicant that sidewalks were absolutely preferred. And I think every council member has inferred that tonight as well. I would like to put in the resolution that, something along the lines that the Housing Accountability Act and State Density Bonus limits the city's ability to require code compliant sidewalks on Mallard Road. Notwithstanding this limitation, it is a strong recommendation of the City Council that, in the interest of public safety and accessibility, the applicant adds sidewalks to the projects as it further develops, as plans are further refined in the upcoming design development phase. Can we put some language in there like that to make it clear that we recommend this, that it is a strong our belief that it's a strong improvement in the project. And as they sell it, as they develop this project further, they're proceeding against the wishes and the directives of the city within our ability to condition or require it. Does council have any concern or thoughts about that?
I would support that new language, absolutely, and appreciate you bringing it up.
Again, can we hear from the applicant in terms of their reaction to that? Does it just get ignored?
Just as a point of fact, when we were at the planning commission, they did not give us overwhelming authority, actually direction, quite the opposite. They didn't give us direction to put in the sidewalk. Although we're not adverse to putting in the sidewalk, particularly if we can do it within the 20-foot lane as we proposed, and we're still open to that. At the same time, the discussion that occurred at the planning commission was not supportive of that motion.
I'll push back a little on that. I mean, the planning commission, in respect to the 20-foot two-way option versus the 16-foot one-way option, they were split on that. You're absolutely right. But I believe all of them would have wanted a sidewalk and not be restrained by the 20 feet, which is further our recommendation.
Okay.
No,
Again, I don't think that was said or asked, but at the same time, if we can somehow accommodate a sidewalk, we would do so.
Yeah. In the language I described, I mentioned in my description, but in the language I'm proposing, I do not mention the planning commission. I mentioned the city council strong recommendation.
Can I ask Peter what the goal is there? Because it seems pretty clear from the applicant that they're not interested. So is this just virtue signaling, or is there a specific goal to that?
Frankly, I think the goal, as I've mentioned to the applicant, I think they're going to have a hard time selling these properties without a sidewalk on it. If I was buying a property, I'd want a sidewalk there. And if it's a strong recommendation of the city, at least there's a documented recommendation that they're going against.
I'd like to hear from Jim on this.
Yeah, I think I share some of the hesitation. I mean, I certainly am supportive of the sidewalk. I always thought the most sensible thing here was a one-way 16-foot street, but apparently the fire department doesn't want that. I don't have religion on that issue one way or the other. We can say in a document that the city council strongly prefers to have a sidewalk built. I'm comfortable with that. I'm not sure I see the utility of it. It certainly is not binding, but it is a record of the recommendation and the preference that comes from this council. So I'm comfy with that, but I think it's a little bit of an empty letter. I did have one question for you, Mayor Mark, about enhancing the deposit issue. You referenced condition number 23, and I'm comfortable with the point, but I think I lost the second half of that. You wanted to enhance the deposit language that's currently expressed in condition 23, but with reference to what was in the planning approval?
No, I felt that as I read item 23 and I read item 66, which was a different deposit. Item 66 laid out the parameters a little more clearly than item 23 did, and I thought they're different deposits for different things. And item 66 laid out the scale and perhaps the timing on it, and I thought item 23 should or could do the same thing.
All right, do we have enough guidance to staff to build out item 23 in the same way that item 66 is?
I don't think at this point the city would know what that deposit amount is. For instance, if the city determines to hire an outside construction inspector, we don't really know what the amount would be, but it could be enhanced by just explaining a little bit more what it would be for. Yeah.
Can I pause our deliberation for 1 minute? Tiburon Fire District Marshal would like to make a comment about the his evaluation.
Good evening. I was a part of the initial project discussion on this well over 4 years ago in this very room. And I gave Mr. Dorfman a 20-foot fire lane is non-negotiable. It would violate state law. So to come here and tell us that 16 feet plus 4 feet of sidewalk is an option defeats the entire housing situation, does it not?
Defeat the
20-foot fire
housing.
lane is required by the California Fire Code in our ordinance. It's irrefutable. So a 16-foot,
Sure, does not work for fire. Yes.
okay,
Agree.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
So going back to the discussion, I'm sort of in the same position as Jim here, which is I think we would all prefer sidewalks, but we understand that's something that we can't require and it's something that the applicant doesn't want to do. So we can put it in the language. I just worry that people think that therefore it somehow has some meaning and it doesn't. So I'm comfortable with doing that. I think it's meaningless, but if that's what the majority wants to do, I'm comfortable with doing that.
I'm comfortable as well. I'll also note, Mayor Mark, that I think your suggestions, which I wrote down as 1 and 2, which is to have the requirements here mirror the sequencing regarding demo and development of the bulkheads that appears in the planning approval. I think that's a good idea. I would expect staff has enough guidance to pull that language from the planning document. And then second was to enhance requirement here, number 72, to match or mirror the planning approval requirements. That's the way I understood your second of those, and I think that makes sense as well. It sounds like with respect to the deposits in number 23, there's not a lot of detail we could add at this time. And with respect to number 4, I'm comfy with the sidewalk language.
Did you mean 73?
73,
instead of
yes.
72?
73, excuse me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further deliberation, or would anybody like to make a motion? Okay, sure.
I think at this point, my major concerns, like everyone, or many people here, not everyone, but many people here, for the health and safety of new residents and current residents who do use the road and who do walk on it. And I'm sorry that we're in this place where sidewalks are just not valued. I also have a great concern about the lack of street parking that's no longer there by narrowing the road, and how that will affect residents on Community Road and those who use the park and the community center. Several years ago, Mr. Dorfman said that his project will be the Manhattanization of Belvedere, and he was correct. I wanted to express my sincere appreciation to all of our residents who have been so involved for the past 2.5 years, trying to ensure that Mallard Point would increase housing without causing irreparable damage to our community. Close to half of all registered voters signed up to receive updates from Brig, and hundreds of you attended meetings and wrote letters to the Planning Commission and the City Council. Sadly, the values of our state officials are different than yours and mine. In their zeal to build more housing, Sacramento doesn't care if they shred our local municipal codes and general plan. Going forward, I hope we can work together to ensure that future projects benefit our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I can move resolution of the City of Belvedere City Council approving a tentative subdivision map at 1 through 22 Mallard Road.
As conditioned by the 3 items we discussed.
Thank you.
Right, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye or nay.
Nay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming for this item. If we could ask for Councilmember Chemnitzer to be recalled, that'd be wonderful. No, I saw, I
I don't blame her.
I would.
And she runs down in like 30 seconds as well, so she'll be back.
Oh, I'm never gonna be done with this. Here, just sit in there.
Want to take a break till she gets here?
I got a hookup. They're in my office. So next time.
Oh, yeah, why don't we take a few minute break to give her the chance to come down? Nope, she's here, but if you want to take a break, does anybody want a break or no? No, we'll keep going if possible.
Everybody's left. Okay.
Beth, let me know if there's still a lot of people,
No, I was working on
as
this.
they come and go.
I started like working on this.
I don't have my computer here now, so,
Myself some notes.
yeah. She's been,
I'm leaving Thursday. Oh, good.
we can now proceed with the other schedule items. Item 10A, which is a preliminary review and discussion of the annual operating budget. Oh, no, there's that. Helga's ready. Yeah. If we could have just take the conversation outside if you don't mind. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Mark, council members. Before you today is the preliminary operating and capital budget for the fiscal year 24-25. To begin with some revenue highlights, total general fund revenues are projected to increase by 3.1%, or approximately 277,000, compared with anticipated current year actuals. The County of Marin estimates that property tax revenues will increase by 6.6% compared to the current year's budget. We have assumed a slightly more conservative 5.8% increase, which equates to a 5% increase compared with current year anticipated actuals, or approximately 358,000, sorry. Revenues from encroachment permits and road closures have seen a notable increase. This is primarily due to a fee hike for these two permits, which was implemented earlier this fiscal year. Building permit and planning revenues have declined, excuse me, since the COVID-19 pandemic. This is attributed to fewer projects and smaller project sizes. We anticipate this continuing in the upcoming fiscal year. No grant funds are currently included in the proposed budget, but we are always actively looking for grant funding opportunities through partner agencies. And now for the expenditure side. From the general fund, we will continue deferring the vacant police officer position through the forecast period. A 3-year contract was negotiated with represented and non-represented groups beginning with fiscal year 23-24. The contract includes a 10% cost of living adjustment spread over 3 years with a 3% increase set for fiscal year 24-25. The budget includes anticipated legal and consultant expenses to finalize the housing element site plan, complete revisions to the odds program, and general legal needs. Included is an estimated $100,000 for a consultant-led fee study to look at the planning department's fee structure to ensure the city is charging appropriately for its services. Also, we have a one-time payment for just over $92,000 to the Tiburon Fire Protection District for a partial payment of the city's share of the deferred Section 115 expense. We have also incorporated the $125,000 one-time payment for the city's contribution toward the Martha property purchase, which was approved by council at their April meeting. Tiburon Fire is estimating a 7.5% increase in our current contract costs again this coming fiscal year due to an increase in district expenditures and significant capital improvements. From our capital fund, we are continuing our upgrade of the city's technology. In the last 2 years, we upgraded staff computers, monitors, and servers. And this year we are incorporating just over $20,000 to update the council chamber laptops and sound system. Both upgrades will reduce costs and increase the stability of the city's public meetings. We also plan to replace the oldest truck in the public work fleet with an EV truck estimated at $61,000, which will reduce fuel consumption and our carbon footprint. Capital project highlights for next fiscal year include continued road improvements, a retaining wall repair project on Beach Road, and the beginning phases of the Beach Road stabilization project, which includes design, engineering, and possible mitigation work in preparation for the repair project anticipated to begin in fiscal year 26-27. These are just a few of the capital projects budgeted for next year. Some of these projects will be funded with partner agency allocated funds and/or private donations. Also, we will be continuing the deferral of the Lanes Initiative for this coming budget year. And now for some pension highlights. This slide shows our required payments to CalPERS to cover our unfunded accrued liability, which is shown in the light blue, payments on the leaseback debt, which is shown in green, and the funds from which were used to make a lump sum payment to CalPERS in fiscal year 17 and 18, which is shown in the dark blue, and the city's normal cost contribution to CalPERS, which is shown in gray, and the contribution to our Section 115 Trust Reserve, which is shown in the dark orange, which began in fiscal year 21. The fiscal year 24-25 unfunded accrued liability payment is based on the most recent valuation report from 6/30 of 22. CalPERS investment return was a negative 6.1% for that year, resulting in a drop in our funded status to 85% and a sharp increase in our required UAL payments over the 5-year forecast period. And also just to note that the CalPERS posted a 5.8% return for the year ending 6/30 of 23, which is still below their 6.8 discount rate. And now for some budget highlights. This slide shows the anticipated transfers that are part of this budget. The fire fund, we're anticipating $1.2 million. The Section 115 pension trust, $300,000. The insurance and legal reserve, $200,000 to cover continuing legal expenses outside of our insured risk. The pension related debt obligation fund for $247,000. The capital improvement fund for $485,000. Road impact fee fund, $151,000. And the critical infrastructure transfer of $650,000 is in anticipation of the upcoming Beach Road stabilization project that is estimated at the $2.2 million, and the equipment replacement fund of 108,000. And then this brings us to the summary of our general fund budget, which anticipates a beginning fund balance of 5.65 million on July 1st of 2024, which estimates that we will exceed our reserve goal for fiscal year 23-24 by 1.52 million. Our projected operating revenues for fiscal year 24-25 are 10.35 million, while the total operating expenditures are 9.86 million. We also plan to spend 744,000 on one-time capital expenditures, resulting in a net general fund deficit of 256,000. As mentioned, this budget does anticipate transfers to the Section 115 Trust Reserve Fund and the Critical Infrastructure Reserve Fund of 300,000 and 650,000 respectively. These two transfers are in anticipation of future year expenditures. This results in a change in fund balance of 1.2 million, but with the excess reserves of 1.52 million from 23-24, we are anticipating an ending fiscal year 24-25 year-end balance of 4.45 million. And this brings us to our next slide, where we look at our general fund reserve. The reserve policy is to maintain a reserve equal to 50% of the projected general fund expense plus fire transfer plus pension debt service. Using this formula, the city should maintain a general fund reserve of 4.34 million in fiscal year 24-25. The projected general fund balance as of June 30th, 2025 is 4.45 million, which equals 51% of the general fund reserve goal. This slide shows the history of the general fund's actual ending fund balance, the fiscal year 23-24 estimated general fund balance of 5.65 million, and the 5-year projections. The green line reflects the council's reserve policy goal. And as you can see, the proposed budget allows the reserve policy goal to be met for the next 5 years. And in summary, a few highlights of this budget are: a general fund reserve policy is met over the 5-year forecast period. We continue with a contribution to our 115 pension trust fund, and we are contributing to the critical infrastructure fund in anticipation of the 2.2 million Beach Road stabilization project. The budget process reflects a fiscally conservative approach, which allocates resources to maintain staffing levels and the operation needs of the city. So what are our next steps? First of all, we are asking for your input today, and we'll take your suggestions into consideration while we continue to refine our budget projections. And we will bring the budget back to council for adoption on June 10th after we conduct the public hearing. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions for our city staff on this?
Thank you very much. Actually, hearing you say it after reading it helped a lot. So thanks for that explanation. It was really great. One of the things that you highlighted was that we were in deficit of 200 and something, whatever it was. And yet at the same time, we're contributing 650,000 to the infrastructure fund. So I just wondered, since the budget seemed to show that in outer years that deficit should disappear, and it looked like there were more positive ending balances. So I was curious why we would make the choice to put that amount in now, where maybe if we put 300,000 in versus 650, then we would have a balanced budget there. And then as the city brought in more healthier amounts, but I'm just asking the question.
So because we had the large excess reserves that we're anticipating from this fiscal year, we thought it would be prudent to put that money into the critical infrastructure reserve now in anticipation of the Beach Road stabilization project that's coming up, because we're going to need 1.7 million out of that fund. And then, you know, we have less capital projects. We're not putting money or as much money into the critical infrastructure until the later years. So we thought it was the best approach at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Could you put up that,
Yeah.
that use of funds, or the chart you had up a little while ago, I think 2 slides after the pension chart? Yes.
That one.
So as I understand this, you've got the operating side up top. The expenditures in the next grouping are all capital expenditures that you're transferred to a fund that are anticipated to be used in the 24-25 fiscal year. And the two below that, the transfer to the pension trust fund and the critical infrastructure fund, those are pre-funding for future projects.
Correct.
And looking to, so that 950 is the amount from our previous year's surpluses to basically pre-fund these projects in an attempt to fund them when the money is needed.
That's correct.
Just to build on that, it's a smoothing technique that you put in place with budgets. And so if we didn't transfer it this year, there might be the impression that we have excess funds to spend elsewhere. And we don't have excess funds to spend elsewhere. We need to fund this project. If we don't, we already have quite a lot in the critical infrastructure fund today because of prudent fiscal planning. And now we're adding more so that in the year that the project is implemented, we're not going to have to cut services. It's just a smoothing mechanism.
Along those same lines, on I think it's page 6, and I'm sure this is all the same, but it's just confusing to me. So you have written that 485,179 will be transferred to the capital improvement fund to pay for capital projects, but those are including the Beach Road
No.
repair. No.
That's
Separate from,
yeah.
okay.
That's current fiscal year 24-25 capital
okay.
projects.
Okay, got it. Okay, perfect, thanks.
I didn't mean to say no so bluntly. Sorry.
No, I don't care. You can say no like that any old time. No feelings here. And then on page 8, it talks about road impact fee expenditures of 151,000. And then later on page 49, the income is 213. And I just wondered, is there a reason for not spending? Is it because the 151 is based on last year's income, but the 213 on page 49 would probably be what would be used the following year. We always sort of a year off. I think it's just the income. It's on the income sheet on page 49.
Yes, so the road impact fee, that's the income, and it also includes, it also includes the gas tax is included in that revenue.
Oh, okay.
And so,
That gets used somewhere else.
right.
Okay, thanks. And then one other request, unfortunately going in the other direction of spending money. I think on page 23, it says that coyote mitigation would be $4,000. And I apologize that I got this just today from Rebecca Dimitrik, our wildlife consultant. And she sent proposed consulting services for next year. And she was requesting $8,000 to be billed quarterly. And it would cover monitoring the hotline that we currently have and connecting with everyone, monitoring all the surveillance cameras we put up, delivering monthly status reports, maintaining a coyote activity map, assisting with newsletters. As needed, she would advise on preventative actions, following up with residents who submit reports, conduct on-site consultations. She does training for the police, and she's, as I mentioned today, she'd be doing a public presentation to the entire community on an annual basis, or as long as we use her consulting. So I think she spelled out pretty clearly. I don't know who to give this to.
I'll take that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway, so the request would be 8,000
Per quarter?
No, for the year.
Oh, okay.
But I think you have it in as 4,000.
I did.
I have some questions. Did you say that there is no grant revenue reflected in, no grant funding reflected in our revenues? I thought I heard you say that.
I did. There's no new grants.
So that doesn't, so I have a couple questions about that. So that would not include the Prop 68 annual grant fund? Are you not including that as a new grant?
I'm not including that as a new grant.
As
So-
reflected on page 36.
Right. There is, we still have that Prop 68 grant. We don't get new grant funds each year from that. We just haven't spent those grant funds yet. So
Isn't that use it or lose it?
we just signed an extension to that grant for another 4 years so
Okay.
that we have the opportunity to use those funds.
Okay, but we are safe in securing those funds. Those are
Yes.
important
Yes.
for our public infrastructure. So, so we have a couple items regarding the EV chargers in the city. One at the Corporation Yard, I think, and one here at Community, at the Community Center. Did we not apply for the TAM grant at the last? I sent an email to staff about this last week, and I don't know that I got an answer, but at the last TAM meeting, they reported out that all of the jurisdictions, so 9 out of 11 jurisdictions had applied for a grant for the technical assistance for EV chargers. And are we one of the that did not apply?
We're one of them that did apply. So we did get TAM funds and MCE funds
Yes.
for the chargers here at City Hall.
Oh, great.
So
But that's not new funding? That's
No.
not new grant funding?
No, we received that revenue already.
Oh, excellent. So that's this year, not in the projected year.
Correct.
That's fantastic. And I understand that staff is communicating with David at
We are,
TAM on
yes.
an ongoing basis. There are these periodic funding opportunities, and I want to thank staff for keeping on top of that. So we obtained a housing element grant to assist us in the current third cycle or third
Revision.
revision.
middle.
I was going to say attempt, but revision. Are those also not new funds?
Those are not new funds, and we're we're getting ready to submit the request for reimbursement from that grant. It was 65,000.
Great. Okay. So in other words, my inquiry is that we have tax revenue, but we also, staff and this council are actively pursuing all grant opportunities to provide additional revenue for the city.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Was there a grant, a partial grant to help fund restoration of the Harry B. Allen steps? I thought at one time there was some private funding involved in that.
I believe that was a private donation that we got 49,000 to go towards the Harry B. Allen. And we haven't spent it.
But
and
we
it's-
have received it.
We have.
Okay, and that's the full 49 that's reflected in this budget.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Then I wanted to ask about the 100,000. For a consultant to review our fee structure. I was just trying to understand the return on investment there, because that seems like a very high consultant fee to revise a fee structure that staff has been working on for many years.
So the 100,000 is just an estimate. We don't know for sure how much it's going to cost. We've just started looking into this process, and, to make sure, since the planning and building revenues have been declining this year, and we're anticipating the same for the upcoming year, to make sure that we have and are collecting all the fees that we can associated with the planning.
So when James Campbell and I worked on the cost recovery program 4 years ago, I believe it was, maybe 3. We worked on that in order to offset consultant fees, and the estimate at that time for that kind of fee, that may not be all of the fee structure you're talking about, but a good part of it. The estimate was that it would cost between 25 and 35,000. And I just wonder, because that's a really big amount for a consultant, I think, for what seems like a pretty small project, although it's an important project. I wonder if staff might take a closer look at what we have and what revisions to the fee structure would be required. I haven't heard from staff or tonight that that would mean starting completely over. So I just would ask you to take a closer look at that and see whether narrowing the project or getting a closer estimate might be valuable at this time in the budget.
We will, thank you.
I don't have anything.
I actually forgot. If we go ahead and get a consultant to discuss, help us with fee structure, do you think we can ask them to also do a nexus study for the housing element? Because that was something that we were looking into, that we might have to hire someone to do a study that lets us know the cost of an ADU, so that if it allows developers to pay rather than putting in housing. And so one of the amounts we were looking to discover is what an ADU would cost in Belvedere, to give us the appropriate rationalization for mentioning it in the housing element. So if you do a fee structure, I didn't know if you could throw that fee in as well.
Yeah, no, let me comment on this.
Maximize the fees.
This number has been debated already by the Finance Committee, myself and Councilmember Wilkinson. And I agree. It's the return on that amount of money through a fee structure is very, very dubious, and something that I think we need to look hard at. We have seen from a forecasting perspective that as appropriately and as reasonably we're attempting to recover costs, it's going the wrong way. A combination of, my suspicion is that we're not looking at the denominator in the equation probably isn't right. Meaning we're not capturing enough costs in the department that are directly attributable to those private services being rendered. So I think we need to look at that again with the work that's being done, and look at it going back and then project it going forward, which a fee study would do. It would also look at the inclusionary replacement in lieu fees, should we wish to do that. Although there is a resource from the county that we're hoping to get that would be in place of that. So we certainly will do that. And as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, Sally and my conversations were, there's a lot of work we can do internally to investigate this and look to have that be a budget savings and not a budget expenditure. Any further questions or comments on the first pass at our 24-25 budget?
No, can I just talk briefly, just sort of summarizing, because the conversations in the Finance Committee were pretty in-depth and came back for a second time. And the general consensus there, which I think is correct, is that for now we still have some room with the budget, but that our trends in terms of pensions and fire and infrastructure costs just continue to get worse. And so, and on the fire budget in particular, the projections look pretty bad. And so we are sort of aggressively studying where we can raise revenues right now without taxation. And so all those things are getting investigated through the Finance Committee. And I think we'll have sort of more details for the City Council in coming months in some of those areas.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And huge thank you to Helga and the Finance Committee and all of you that have worked on it. I do have just one additional item. It's come up several years in a row, and continues to be called out as a priority. And I just want to make sure that this, but doesn't get done. And so I'll tell you what it is and where it seems to be reflected, but it's got zeros next to it. And that is the Founders Room upgrade in order to provide a heating and cooling room in the event of PSPS or other loss of power to the city. And possibly even a place for seniors to meet. We've talked about it for a long time. It's listed on page 6 of the staff report as whoops, sorry. On page 2 as enhanced capacity of the community center and founders room to serve the public as a recharging station, information hub, and gathering center during outages and other events. In other cities, this is sometimes called a heating and cooling room, depending on the needs of the residents during the summer or winter seasons. We don't have that in Belvedere. I think it really is an important thing for us to keep as a top priority. And on the in the expenditure plan, it seems to have.
No, I think it's in there some, I can't find it right now. I think it's in there this year, the improvements at the ranch.
On page 36 of the budget, there is a line item
Oh, great.
for the founders room that does show 0, but I think there's carryover funds that are anticipated. Is
So
that right?
I'm looking at the capital expenditure plan budget item, community buildings. It doesn't have a page number. And that
It's the last page of the summary before page 17.
On page 36, if you look on page 36.
Yes. So
and there is 30,000 in there for this year for it.
that says
improvements.
furniture replacement. The idea of the heating and cooling room was to run a gas line so that fireplace could be usable in the event of an emergency. We do have a large number of seniors in Belvedere, and we have during COVID, the census showed we had about 250 people living alone. So I do want to make sure that this doesn't just keep getting rolled over, and that the budget provides funds that, and the intention that this year that project will actually get done.
Isn't
I
it,
can comment on.
just real quick,
Yep.
isn't it the community center kitchen remodel 65? Isn't that it at the bottom of page 36?
I think that's a different one.
No,
Is that a
the
different one?
kitchen remodel is upstairs.
Okay.
I
Yep,
mean, it could be in here, but I thought I read all the small print, but I didn't see it. And since this is preliminary, we don't need to resolve it tonight. And I'm certainly eager to hear what you have to say, but I just wanted to, since this is preliminary, whether we can keep this front of mind as we go forward.
Yep. So to answer the question, absolutely, we can keep it front and center. And in fact, we are about to have an inspection by a PG&E representative to find out if we qualify for an incentive that would pay for a mini split heating and cooling unit to be placed down there, which would heat and cool the room at hopefully a discount. And it seems to me that, well, what we're aiming for is that would be possible within the budget of the furniture replacement.
I see. So it says furniture replacement, but it also includes the heating and cooling elements there.
That's how I take it, yes.
We want it to have a place where people can go and gather as they did during the PSPS in the future in the event of loss of power. So I think that's great. And you could just keep me apprised of that. I'd very much appreciate it. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely.
Can I just mention one other thing? The other discussion that was had at length in the Finance Committee was that we don't feel like the budget is presented very well for lay or even for the finance committee, frankly. It's not presented very well. So one of the projects that Helga, John Wilton and myself are going to be working on in the coming year is to present this in a very different way so that it's much more usable for everybody to more clearly and quickly understand the budget. And I think Helga's already, and Tony have done a great job already this year in simplifying the capital expenditures that used to be like, I don't know, 75 pages long or something. And it's now been condensed into a couple of tables. So I think there's already progress, and I think there's a lot more that can be made.
Yeah.
Speaking as a layperson, I will appreciate it.
Yeah, and even some of the tables you've and charts, the one on the screen right now that you put together, you know, in response to the finance committee, and the finance committee chair in particular, fast improvement, and I look forward to seeing those changes. Thank you. I can open the item up for public comments. If there's anyone commenting on this recommendation by the finance committee. Seeing none in the room, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Mark, out of the 6 attendees, there are no hands raised.
Thank you so much. Close the public hearing and bring it back for further comment or a motion to approve the preliminary fiscal. Are we making a motion or are we just? No, we're just hearing it. I understand. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Moving on to item 10B. We are referencing item 7A, which is the motion. We're only reappointing the existing committee member to the Belvedere Tiburon Joint Recreation Committee. The other appointments will be made in June with the balance of the interviews. So can we have a motion to reappoint Chelsea Lund to the Belvedere Tiburon Joint Recreation Committee?
Is it Chelsea Schlund?
Yes, I
Sorry.
think that's a misprint.
I apologize.
Yeah.
I apologize.
So moved.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we do technically need to take public comment.
I'll open public comment for this item. Seeing none.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you.
Make the motion to reappoint Ms. Schlund to the Recreation.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and I'll adjourn this meeting this evening. Thank you all for coming. Oh, I am really sorry again. I've done that a few times tonight. Our last item is the open forum, an opportunity for citizens to briefly address the city council on any item not on tonight's agenda. Anyone in this room would like to address the city in the open forum? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
We have Mr. Rothman.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Rothman. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. I have recognized the difficulty that's been described in terms of the expenses that are coming. I don't mean I mean overall. And it occurred to me that down the road, that you might say help is on the way. Because I realized that, and it would be good if the Finance Committee would look into this, that with the 160 new units that are going to be built by 2031, there's going to be a tremendous amount of tax revenue coming because none of those will be people that were, frozen taxes since Prop 13. It'll all be new construction. And it just being Belvedere, I'm quite sure that the appraised value for each of the units will probably be about $2 million. And therefore, there's going to be, it'll be 16% increase in the total number of units in Belvedere, and none of them will be Prop 13 frozen, if you understand what I'm saying. So there'll be a 16% increase, much more than that, probably 20% increase in the revenue from property taxes, and the property taxes constitute about 78% of the city's revenue. Another feature that's going to help is the Proposition 19, which prevents people from passing on their residences at the frozen tax rate when they pass on. And so the heirs are going to be selling the property. They're not going to be keeping it for rental or anything because they've got low Prop 13 taxes from their parents. So there's going to be more houses going to be sold. And when they're sold, then the tax revenue will go up very markedly. So I really think that there's perhaps less concern when we get concerned about the fire tax and everything. I think there's really less concern than we might have felt if we take into account these very significant increases in revenue that it appears to me are certain to occur. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Rothman. We certainly share your optimism that these houses in our housing element will be built, and we hope that HCD shares your optimism, because that's one of their concerns of ours, that it won't happen, but we hope it does. Thank you very much. And any more hands raised?
We have Stager Johnson.
Stager Johnson. Yes, please. Hi, Mr. Johnson.
You should be able to unmute yourself.
I apologize. I know it's been a long evening, so I'm going to try to make this fast. I'm trying to get some idea from the city's perspective of what is happening with respect to the residents at 9 Northgate Circle. By way of background, I'm out walking most mornings, and Northgate Circle is where my daughter Ashley lives, and it's also part of my morning walking route. And the residence at number 9 North Point Circle has been in construction now for 7+ years. And literally there are weeks and sometimes months that go by where almost nothing happens on that property. It's my understanding that as of fairly recently, they've been granted an occupancy permit for that residence. There is no siding on the house. There is no landscaping in the front yard. There are no lighting fixtures on the residence. And the front of the residence is surrounded by a construction fence, which is anchored by sandbags located in the public right-of-way. It is a cul-de-sac, and if one wants to make a continuous turn in the cul-de-sac, it's often impossible because the residents are now parking 2 cars outside the construction fence in the public right-of-way, and you have to make a 3-point turn if you want to turn there at all. It just seems inconceivable to me that an occupancy permit would be granted for residents in this state of construction. And I'd like to know what leverage the city has and what can be done in order to get this project completed. The neighbors are sick of it. Anybody who looks at it is sick of it. And it just, if the city needs revenue, they should be rolling in money based on construction fines for this project. It's just unbelievable to me that it takes 7 years and almost nothing happens for months at a time. And yet the residents, the owner has been granted an occupancy permit.
Thank you for your comment. I'm not sure whether we can respond tonight, but we certainly, the Director of Planning and Building and myself certainly will respond to you very, 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 very quickly about this. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any further comments?
There are no other hands raised.
Thank you. In that case, we'll adjourn tonight's meeting, and thank you everyone for the long evening. Have a good night.